Chapter 755. After resting, Chu Bei entered the Source Heaven space created by the system and continued to absorb the power of Source Heaven. 7 days later. When Chu Bei walked out of the mysterious space, a cacophony of noises sounded in his ears. Chu Bei frowned slightly and opened the door to see what was happening outside. Ghost! Ghost! Chu Bei's figure had just appeared at the door when a wave of terrified screams sounded in his ears. A group of monks carrying a coffin walked into his courtyard. There were a total of 16 people in the group. The 4 people walking at the front had horrified expressions on their faces. They were so frightened that they loosened their grip on the coffin and smashed it to the ground. When the others saw Chu Bei's appearance, they were similarly terrified and retreated a few steps. Each one of them hid behind the coffin, their pupils dilated to the extreme. Chu Bei's gaze swept across the courtyard and found that there was a piece of white paper pasted in every corner. On the white paper, there was a large and conspicuous word funeral. What the hell is this? Chu Bei could not help but mutter. You, don't come over! The monks behind the coffin stared at Chu Bei in horror and had already retreated outside the courtyard. What's going on? Why aren't you going in to deliver the soul? Suddenly, a clear voice like that of an oriole sounded from outside the door. A woman in green walked to the entrance of the courtyard with a displeased look on her face. When the green-clothed woman saw Chu Bei standing at the door of the inner room, her graceful body suddenly trembled, and her face instantly turned gray. Her entire person seemed to have been struck by a bolt from the blue, like a clay doll carved from wood. Evidently, the appearance of this person who should not have appeared caught her off guard. Niece Hanyan, long time no see, I've missed you. Seeing Xia Hanyan, Chu Bei could not help but wave at her. Are you a human or a ghost now? Xia Hanyan sucked in a breath of cold air, her eyes staring fixedly at Chu Bei. Little martial uncle, you're finally back. Without waiting for Chu Bei to speak, a young girl in a purple dress elegantly ran into a unique courtyard. With Mu Shuer's appearance, Chu Bei couldn't help but smile from the bottom of his heart. It's only been 7 days, and my Shuer has become even more charming. Even little Uncle Master can't resist you, Chu Bei said with a smile as he looked at Mu Shuer. He couldn't help but run his fingers through her hair. Little martial uncle, what are you talking about? Although Mu Shuer couldn't understand what Chu Bei was talking about, she could tell from his tone that he was definitely teasing her. Immediately, her fair face flushed red, and she secretly glared at Chu Bei. Shuer, he's not dead! Xia Hanyan frowned and walked to Mu Shuer's side. Sister Yan, I promised little martial uncle that I wouldn't tell anyone. Mu Shuer bit her lip and avoided Xia Hanyan's questioning gaze. Hearing Mu Shuer's words, Chu Bei recalled that when the fantasy realm disappeared 7 days ago, everyone thought that he had died inside. He had only told Mu Shuer not to explain to anyone, and let these people think that he was dead. But what was this coffin, the monk blowing the trumpet, and the big word, memorial, in front of him? When everyone thought that he had fallen off the cliff, there was no such thing. Why did you fake your death? Xia Hanyan glared at Chu Bei, her words laced with anger. I don't need you here anymore. Leave. Chu Bei glanced at the monks outside the courtyard. After chasing them away, he looked at Xia Hanyan with a serious expression. In these 7 days, did Li Xian do anything? A country can't be without a ruler. Ever since Master passed away, Xian sect has been without a new sect leader. And you, the nominal young sect leader, died in the fantasy realm. In these 3 days, the elders have rushed back from outside, preparing to vote for a new sect leader. Currently, the most popular candidate for sect leader is Great Elder Li Xian. This time, too many disciples died in the fantasy realm. Even Liao died inside. It was his idea to release the souls of the disciples who died in batches. At this point, Xia Hanyan's tone suddenly changed. What has this got to do with you faking your death? I didn't expect such a big move, Chu Bei murmured. He narrowed his eyes and pondered for a moment before asking, which elders currently support Li Xian to take the position? Currently there are 3rd elder, 5th elder, 6th elder, 7th elder, 9th elder and 11th elder. The number of people has already exceeded half. At this point, a trace of surprise flashed across Xia Henyan's beautiful eyes. She looked suspiciously at Chu Bei. You deliberately died for Li Xian to see? 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11. Chu Bei repeated, memorizing these numbers in his mind. Then, he looked at Xia Henyan and said with a smile, Where are they now? I, the nominal young sect leader, am still alive. The Purple Cloud sect does not need a new sect leader for the time being. Purple Cloud Grand Hall. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Xia Henyan's expression was a little startled. She felt that she did not recognize this martial uncle who grew up with her. Let's go and show our faces. After saying that, Chu Bei flung his sleeves and walked towards the Purple Cloud Grand Hall. At the same time, the Purple Cloud Grand Hall halfway up the mountain was filled with a murderous aura. In the Grand Hall, a red carpet stretched far away. At the end of the red carpet was a luxurious dragon chair made of sandalwood. However, no one was sitting on the dragon chair. On both sides of the red carpet, there were 12 seats arranged in an orderly manner. 10 of them were already occupied. Fourth elder, why are you so stubborn? What's wrong with letting the great elder take the sect leader's position? The third elder persuaded a middle-aged man opposite him. So far, no one has seen Chu Bei die in the illusion with their own eyes. Even if he died, it has only been 7 days and you want to appoint the sect leader. Isn't it a little too hasty? The fourth elder snorted coldly. Fourth elder, no matter how much you oppose, in terms of numbers, the supporters have already surpassed the opponents. Even if you oppose, the result will not change. Calling you back is just a formality. The fifth elder chimed in from the side. In my opinion, regarding the appointment of a new sect leader, let's wait for the second elder to come back before making a decision. The eighth elder said. In the Grand Hall, the crowd was divided into 2 factions on whether to support Li Xian, but in terms of numbers, it was obvious that the supporters outnumbered the opponents. Even if Bai Feng comes back, so what if he opposes? The sect leader has been dead for 3 months, and the nominal young sect leader Chu Bei also died in the illusion. Other than me, is there any other candidate for the sect leader's position? Li Xian stood up from his seat and glanced coldly at the fourth elder, the eighth elder, and the other opponents. He snorted coldly and said, Since this matter is set in stone, what's the point of obstructing me? Or perhaps, Bai Feng wants to take the position himself? I'm not dead yet, and you're already discussing the appointment of a new sect leader. Isn't that a little inappropriate? Suddenly, a mocking voice floated in from outside the Grand Hall. Then, a figure walked into the Grand Hall leisurely. Chapter 756. With Chu Bei's arrival, the already somber atmosphere in the main hall instantly reached a new peak. How? You're not dead! The fifth elder stared at Chu Bei in astonishment, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. Li Xian, the third elder, and the others' faces were also extremely unsightly, especially the former, whose eyes flashed with killing intent. His precious son died in the illusion, but Chu Bei came out alive. Fifth elder, from what I've heard, do you really want Chu Bei to die in the illusion? The fourth elder stared at the fifth elder mockingly, then the corners of his mouth curved into a smile. Chu Bei is still alive. Isn't this a happy occasion worthy of celebration? Why would I want Chu Bei to die? The fifth elder took a deep breath. He emphasized every syllable he spoke. Smart people could tell that he didn't mean what he said. If you must appoint a new sect leader, how about I, the young sect leader, take up the position directly? Under everyone's gaze, Chu Bei straightened his clothes, walked along the red carpet to the end, and then sat down on the dragon throne with a thud. In the main hall, although Chu Bei was the youngest, in terms of seniority, he was the same as these elders. Furthermore, he knew very well how his father had died. Because of that, he did not show the slightest bit of respect to these elders from the very beginning. Looking at Chu Bei sitting on the main seat, Li Xian's brows furrowed, and his expression was even a little ferocious. After trying his best to suppress the anger in his heart, he said, The first requirement to take up the position of sect leader is to reach the martial general realm. Although you are the young sect leader, your cultivation is only at the 8th level of the Qi tempering stage, which is far from enough. Actually, it's not that far off. Chu Bei smiled indifferently, and the true martial Qi in his body surged out. 3-star martial spirit! Sensing Chu Bei's aura, the faces of all the elders in the main hall, including Li Xian, suddenly changed. With this kind of cultivation, he was qualified to be a teacher in the sect. Recovering from his shock, Li Xian stared intently at Chu Bei, his eyes filled with confusion and bewilderment. Impossible! How could you have such a cultivation? 3 months ago, his cultivation had clearly been crippled by the black bone poison. Even though the other party had encountered some fortuitous encounters in the outside world and was able to cultivate anew, the other party was still unable to do so. However, in less than half a month, how could a cripple cultivate to a 3-star martial spirit? There's nothing to be surprised about. Perhaps this is what it means to fight to survive in the face of death. Perhaps the heavens saw that my cultivation was crippled, so they rewarded me with some heavenly treasures and allowed me to meet a mysterious old man. Chu Bei's lips curled into a smile as he looked at Li Xian, whose expression was extremely ugly, and spouted nonsense. Mysterious old man? The group of elders' eyes were filled with curiosity. He was the one who gave me the illusion jade in the dreamland. It was also because I absorbed the illusion jade that my cultivation base advanced by leaps and bounds. Chu Bei said casually, spreading his hands. What? The mysterious old man you're talking about is the flaming old man in the dreamland. When the elders heard Chu Bei's words, they looked at each other in dismay, their expressions becoming more and more astonished. When the dreamland ended, they found out from the disciples on the heaven ranking that the monster guarding the illusion jade was not something they could fight against. Fortunately, at the critical moment, a flaming old man appeared out of thin air and saved them. However, the illusion jade was also taken away by him. But who would have thought that the flaming old man would actually give the illusion jade to Chu Bei? It's really the sect master's spirit from heaven. The young sect master is only 20 years old, but his cultivation has already reached 3-star martial spirit. The 8th elder suddenly laughed. No matter what kind of opportunity you have, you are still not a martial general. You still can't be the sect master, Li Xian said with a cold face. I'm not in a hurry. I'll leave this position empty for a period of time. When I become a martial general, I'll take this position. Chu Bei patted his butt and stood up from the chair. In fact, if he wanted to, he could open the system reward right now and directly raise his cultivation to 2 stars. However, in the current situation, there was no need for him to be so high profile. It was always good to have a trump card. Anyway, he had already achieved his goal. First, he knew which elders should be killed. Second, he had successfully stopped Li Xian from taking the position. Great Elder, since I'm not dead and my cultivation has been restored, you wouldn't still be coveting the sect master's position, right? Chu Bei teased Li Xian, his words filled with sarcasm. Let's go. Li Xian snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves and walked out of the hall angrily. 3rd elder, 5th elder and the rest followed closely behind. Instead, it was 4th elder, 8th elder and the rest who stood against Li Xian who surrounded Chu Bei in the middle, asking Chu Bei about his recent experiences. Chu Bei could only continue to talk nonsense. After the elders left, Xia Hanyan and Mu Shuer, who had been eavesdropping outside the hall, walked in. Little Chu, you've really made me look at you in a new light. Although you were a little shrewd in the past, at least on the surface, you were very respectful to the Great Elder and the rest. But now, you've angered the Great Elder and the rest. Xia Hanyan looked at Chu Bei in surprise and couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Chu Bei smiled and did not reply. If he used the power of Source Heaven, he could destroy this group of people in an instant. After returning to the courtyard, Chu Bei sat cross-legged. His body was suffused with a layer of hazy purple light. Under the bath of the purple light, Chu Bei only felt streams of warm flow throughout his body, and it was extremely comfortable. As the true martial qi in his meridians became more and more abundant, Chu Bei's face gradually became flushed and his mouth began to gasp for breath. 4-star martial spirit. 5-star martial spirit. 6-star martial spirit. 9 stars martial spirit. 1-star general. This rising aura gradually stabilized until it reached the 2 stars general level. Gradually, Chu Bei opened his eyes and saw that his feet were wrapped in a layer of gray cyclone. With one step, he actually went from the westernmost side of the house to the easternmost side, a distance of more than 5 meters. In this plane, the quenching qi realm refines the body, the mortal evolution realm initiates the release of true martial qi, the contacting martial realm. In this major realm, martial spirits can already condense spirit armor. The general can condense a cyclone in his body and can fly for short distances. The martial king can truly fly. After a while, Chu Bei's right hand danced and evolved a beautiful dress with the power of source heaven. When the dress touched his hand, a trace of icy cold touch went straight into his palm. The entire dress was sky blue, it had an extraordinary texture, and was as thin as a cicada's wing. Although it did not have any fancy patterns, it revealed exquisite nobility everywhere. It could be said to be fresh and natural, completely natural. The most important thing was that the surface of the dress released a faint light. It was faintly discernible and very bewitching. Chu Bei nodded in satisfaction, then took the dress and ran towards Mu Shuer's courtyard. Although Xia Hanyan and Chu Bei grew up together, this Chu Bei was once the Chu Bei. To the current him, Xia Hanyan's weight in his heart was far less than Mu Shuer's. Chapter 757. Young martial uncle, this is such a beautiful dress. Mu Shuer's eyes lit up when she saw the blue dress in Chu Bei's hands. Her mouth opened slightly, revealing a variety of expressions: surprise, joy, and excitement. As a girl, Mu Shuer couldn't help but reach out to touch the dreamy sky blue dress in Chu Bei's hands. The extraordinary texture, the cool touch, the natural embroidery, and the most stunning thing was the faint blue glow. It was extremely dreamy. The Genesis sky dress, a surprise for you. Chu Bei handed the dress to Mu Shuer, and stood with his hands behind his back with a smile on his face. No woman could resist the temptation of beauty. Young martial uncle, is this really for me? Mu Shuer swallowed her saliva. Her tongue seemed to have frozen as she stammered out a complete sentence. What else could it be? Chu Bei shrugged. Mu Shuer smiled when she received another affirmation. Her dimples appeared exceptionally sweet. Thank you, young martial uncle. Mu Shuer's heart felt as if it was filled with honey. She smiled, and even her cheeks were faintly flushed. Come back to your senses. Go change your clothes in the room and show them to me. Chu Bei raised his eyebrows at Mu Shuer and pointed to the room behind them. Okay. Mu Shuer nodded her head. Then, under Chu Bei's watchful gaze, she quickly returned to her room. Tap, tap, tap. About an hour later, cheerful footsteps could be heard from the room. Young martial uncle, does it look good? Mu Shuer pouted when she arrived in front of Chu Bei. Is such a beautiful dress wasted on me? Chu Bei was stunned when he saw Mu Shuer in the Genesis sky dress. He was stunned for a while before he shook his head repeatedly. Beautiful like an orchid, stunning the mortal world. Hearing Chu Bei's evaluation, Mu Shuer's face turned red. She glanced at Chu Bei reproachfully and said, Young martial uncle, don't tease me in the future. Chu Bei scratched his head awkwardly. He knew that he had lost his composure. Now, he finally understood Chen Nan a little. Perhaps when Chen Nan first met Yusin, he was just like him. Shuer, stand here and don't move. Martial uncle will show you the true power of this star gauze skirt. Chu Bei gestured for Mu Shuer to stand still. Mu Shuer answered softly. 1 minute later. Little martial uncle, don't hit my face. It'll be bad if it suddenly stops working. Mu Shuer gritted her teeth as her gaze locked onto the stone in Chu Bei's hand. Her slender hands gripped her skirt nervously. Don't worry, I won't disfigure you. After comforting Mu Shuer, Chu Bei threw the stone in his hand. Swoosh! With a whoosh, Chu Bei accurately threw the stone in Mu Shuer's direction. Clang! However, just as Mu Shuer closed her eyes in fear, the Genesis sky dress released a sky-blue glow. The sky-blue glow was like a solid wall as it steadily sent the stone flying. That scared me to death. Fortunately, it didn't stop working. Mu Shuer glanced at the stone that landed nearby and patted her chest. Her gaze then landed on Chu Bei's body. Her beautiful brows knitted together as her beautiful phoenix eyes widened unsurprisingly. Little Martial Uncle, I told you not to hit my face, so you changed it to, there? Chu Bei avoided Mu Shuer's murderous gaze as he scratched his head. He quickly glanced at her full chest and smiled awkwardly. There's wind, so I didn't control it well. He really had only thrown it casually because he knew that the system's products would definitely be of high quality. Who would have thought that he would aim at her full chest? I'm going to ignore Martial Uncle. Mu Shuer snorted and turned to return to her room. She closed the door and left Chu Bei swaying in the wind. Through the window, Chu Bei faintly watched Mu Shuer change her face faster than flipping through a book. He shook his head. Heh, women! Host has received an illusion seed. The system's voice rang in Chu Bei's mind. Living illusions would appear once every year. Those forces that possessed illusionary realms would go into search for opportunities and the existence of illusory jades while the illusionary realms were open. But there were also illusions that had not been discovered. Perhaps due to the passage of time or other special reasons, when they stopped producing illusion jades, they were called dead illusions. They also had another name, which was ruins. Once an illusion died, it would stay in one place forever. Even if all the opportunities within were emptied, it would not disappear. Every time an illusion died, it would cause a commotion. This was because it would give birth to a seed. It was said that if one obtained this seed, as long as they used the right method, it was possible to give birth to a new illusion. Where should I go to find a ruin, especially one with a seed? Chu Bei murmured and turned to the sex contribution hall. The contribution hall was a place where the Purple Cloud sect issued missions. At the same time, it was also the place where the most information was collected. Disciples of the sect could accept missions issued here. After completing them, they would receive a certain amount of contribution points. These contribution points could be used to exchange for martial arts techniques, elixirs, and other items in the treasure pavilion. Arriving at the contribution hall, Chu Bei looked around and was attracted by a mission. Perhaps the heavens were looking after Chu Bei. This mission was related to ruins. However, when he saw the name of the person who issued the mission, Chu Bei frowned. Liu Bei, the 9th elder of the Purple Cloud sect. He was a 5-star general who supported Li Xian's ascension. This dead illusion was located in Lingyun City. It was discovered by a local woodcutter in Sunset Valley 4 days ago. With Lingyun City as the center, there were 5 major forces within a 100-mile radius. 4 sects and 1 region. Chu Bei's Purple Cloud sect was one of the 4 sections. Perhaps for the sake of harmony, the 5 major forces immediately sealed off the news and sent people to guard the ruins. They agreed to enter the ruins 5 days later, which was tomorrow. As for who the illusion seed belonged to, it would all depend on one's strength. Although the ruins were dead illusions, there were also restrictions. This time, the ruins only allowed those with a cultivation level of 5-star general and below to pass through. However, anyone with a cultivation higher than 5-star martial general would be injured by a strange force the moment they touched the restriction outside the ruins. After reading the mission information, Chu Bei signed up without hesitation. The reason why the sect issued a mission for disciples to participate in the search for illusion seeds was undoubtedly to find cannon fodder. However, Chu Bei did not think that he would become cannon fodder. With Source Heaven's power in hand, Chu Bei could already see the illusion seed waving at him. Chapter 758. Why did my son die in the illusion, but Chu Bei, who should have died, is still alive? Eeyore's death must have something to do with this kid. In a luxurious room, Li Xian slammed his palm on the table, causing it to shatter into pieces. His roar was filled with hatred. What's even more unexpected is that this kid actually obtained such a great opportunity. If he is allowed to continue like this, I'm afraid he might really break through and become a general. Third Elder picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. If that really happens, I'm afraid the position of sect master will have to be given to him. The position of sect master is something I must obtain. Third Elder, help me think of a good way to get rid of him without anyone knowing. Li Xian looked at Third Elder. Right now, it is a sensitive period. Fourth Elder, Eighth Elder, and the others must be watching Chu Bei's every move to ensure his safety. If I want to get rid of that kid without alerting them, I'll have to think about it. After saying that, the Third Elder fell into deep thought. Tap, tap, tap. At this moment, a figure knocked on the door and walked in. Ninth Elder, what made you so happy? Li Xian looked at Liu Bei with displeasure. He was not happy at all. Big brother, I'm here to tell you a piece of good news. Liu Bei pulled a chair over and sat down. He smiled and said, You know about the Sunset Valley ruins, right? Chu Bei just signed up. What? Li Xian and Third Elder stood up at the same time. At first, they were shocked, then they looked at each other. It was not difficult to see the joy in each other's eyes. There's a path to heaven, but he doesn't want to take it. There's no door to hell. Li Xian clenched his fists. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. His gaze fell on Liu Bei. Ninth Elder, you should know what to do, right? This time, there's no room for error. He must die. Hee. Big brother, don't worry. I promise to do it cleanly. Liu Bei patted his chest, his brows brimming with confidence. In a day's time, the news of Chu Bei's survival was like a tap water effect, quickly being known by everyone in the sect. The next day, at the first glimmer of dawn, Chu Bei got up. When Chu Bei arrived at Liu Bei's designated meeting place, he actually saw two familiar figures. His childhood sweetheart, Xia Hanyan, and his good relationship with Liu Fei, who was also on the heaven roll. Chu Bei, where have you been hiding these past few days? After we separated in the illusion, I thought you had died in there. What a waste of the paper money I burned. Liu Fei could not help but give Chu Bei a punch. It's said that you even know that flame old man. He even gave you an illusion jade, allowing your cultivation to soar to the 3-star martial spirit realm. What's the saying again? Bad people don't live long, but good people live for 1,000 years. No matter what, I won't die before you. Chu Bei laughed at Liu Fei. Chu Bei, isn't it good for you to stay in the sect when you have nothing to do? Xia Hanyan looked at Chu Bei unhappily. Niece Hanyan, why can you go but I can't? My cultivation is no weaker than yours. Chu Bei shrugged his shoulders at Xia Hanyan, causing her to tremble in anger. Since everyone is here, let's set off. As the leader, Liu Bei glanced at Chu Bei and said after clearing his throat. There were more than 20 people in the group, and more than half of them were on the heaven roll. Lingtian City, 10 kilometers north of the city, Sunset Valley. Outside the valley, there was a dense crowd and it was noisy. Looking around, there were hundreds to thousands of people gathered in groups of 2s and 3s as they discussed intensely. From their clothes, it was obvious that they were ordinary citizens of Lingyun City. Perhaps they had received some news and came here to join in the fun. Everyone, look, someone is here! Someone in the crowd shouted. Then, many people looked to the east in unison. They saw that this group of people were wearing the same robes, and the image of a sword behind them was especially eye-catching. They are from the Divine Sword sect! Some people in the crowd with sharp eyes exclaimed. Look, the Li Fire sect is here too! Another group of people arrived. They were all wearing fiery red robes, and on the chest of their robes, there was an image of a burning flame. As expected of the Luo Water sect, there is not a single man. Another group of people came from the west. The members were all women, and the leader was a middle-aged woman. I never expected them to be so punctual. Liu Fei patted Chu Bei on the shoulder, and at the same time, pointed at the other 3 sects, and could not help but say. Every sect places great importance on matters like ruins, so there will not be any absences. If there are any absences, it will be a good thing for us. After all, we will have one less competitor. Xia Hanyan glanced at Lu Fei and said, Liu Bei, I never expected that the person leading the Purple Cloud sect would be you. The middle-aged woman leading the Luo Water sect coldly looked at Liu Bei, and then her gaze landed on Chu Bei, probing. You are Chu Bei? Auntie Hong, it's only been 5 years, and you can't recognize me? Relying on his memory, Chu Bei greeted the middle-aged woman. As the Luo Water sect and the Purple Cloud sect were relatively close to each other, the interactions between the two sects were relatively close. The middle-aged woman's name was Xie Hong. She was the same as Liu Bei, a 5-star martial general. The Divine Sword sect's leader was Quan Guang, while the Li Fire sect's leader was Zhu Yi, who was also a 5-star martial general. Now all that's left is the people from the sacred region. I wonder how many people they will send this time. Liu Fei whispered into Chu Bei's ear. Unlike the 4 major sects, the sacred region was one of the 5 major factions, but it was especially mysterious. On the surface, it was known that its heritage was not weaker than the 4 major sects, but it was unknown how strong it was. Phew! At this moment, a beam of light flashed across the distance, and half a second later, a figure appeared above Chu Bei and company. It was a youth who looked to be in his 20s. He had long eyebrows that resembled willows, a jade-like body, and bronze skin. His facial features were distinct and deep, and his black hair was draped over his ears. The most eye-catching thing was the sword beneath his feet. Streams of light swirled around it, releasing a terrifying killing intent. Sacred artifact! The sacred region sure is generous! Xia Hanyan's gaze landed on the sword beneath the youth's feet, and a look of surprise flashed in her eyes. A sword that could allow one to fly in the air was definitely a sacred artifact with a spirit. Seniors, I had some matters to attend to on the way here, so I came late. I hope you don't blame me. I'm Han Yang, the current sacred son of the sacred region. The youth smiled slightly, and at the same time, emitted a powerful aura. Sensing the aura emitted by Han Yang, Quan Guang and company's expressions changed slightly. They were aghast. The sacred son is still young, but his cultivation level has reached the level of a 5-star martial general. You make us old fellows feel ashamed. Seniors, you praise me too much. Han Yang maintained his smile, looking genial. Chapter 759. Only the sacred region's saint came? Liu Bei took a step forward and asked. The elders in the sacred region said that I am invincible below the martial king level. This time, I alone am enough. Han Yang cupped his fist towards Liu Bei, his words filled with confidence. Invincible below the martial king level. Your elders have high expectations of you, Liu Bei said with some displeasure. Ever since Han Yang arrived, he had become the focus of attention. Other than being the mysterious sacred region's current saint, he also had the cultivation of a 5-star martial general. Chu Bei, this evildoer's age is about the same as ours, but why is his cultivation level so much higher than ours? He is comparable to the 9th elder. Even in another 10 years, we will not be able to reach his current level. Liu Fei placed a hand on Chu Bei's shoulder as he looked at Han Yang with admiration. He is indeed very outstanding among his peers. Xia Hanyan was not stingy with her praise, her eyes filled with approval. He he. Chu Bei glanced in Han Yang's direction as the corners of his mouth twitched. He did not think much of it. He was just a posturing fool. What caught Chu Bei's attention was the black bag on Han Yang's back. Faintly, he had a feeling that the item in Han Yang's bag was not simple. Since the 5 of us are here, let's go in. The ownership of the seed will depend on our own abilities, Li Fire Sect's Zhu said. As the illusion had not been dead for long, the Sunset Valley was currently shrouded in fog. The dense and resplendent 5-colored curtain of light connected together, like an inescapable net made of 5-colored threads, enveloping the Sunset Valley. Follow me in. As he said this, Liu Bei glanced at Chu Bei. His eyes darted around, as if he was planning something. Sensing the killing intent that flashed in Liu Bei's eyes, Chu Bei smiled without any change in his expression. With Liu's attack in the purple cloud illusion, he had already guessed that Liu Bei would take action in the ruins when he saw that the leader of the mission was Liu Bei. However, he did not care. Putting aside the fact that he had Genesis Heaven power, it was hard to say who would be the one to kill whom based on his own strength. Chu Bei, Xia Hanyan and the rest followed closely behind Liu Bei. Both of their palms were placed on the 5-colored light screen. There was a ripple and they disappeared. Passing through the light screen, Chu Bei could only feel a dense heaven and earth spiritual qi rushing towards him. The density of this spiritual qi was far above that of the purple cloud illusory realm. This was a strange world that was enshrouded in light and mist. It was hazy, mysterious, and profound. "Is this what happens after an illusion dies?" Chu Bei murmured. The surrounding mist was hazy, as if the chaos was surging, and everything looked blurry. Looking around, there were only people from the purple cloud sect around. The Divine Sword sect, Li Fire sect and other factions were nowhere to be seen, as though they had been dispersed. Liu Fei looked at Liu Bei. "Ninth Elder, can you determine the location of the seed?" Liu Bei shook his head. "Let's go deeper first." After traveling for a while, the hazy white mist gradually dissipated as his vision gradually improved. Chu Bei once again sized up the ruins in front of him. It was like an abandoned world. All he saw was desolation, and it looked extremely bleak and distant. Looking ahead, he saw large swathes of ruins. What might have once been a resplendent hall was now a dilapidated wall. The ruins were huge and empty, with rubble everywhere. "Is this caused by the passage of time, or was it caused by a terrifying battle?" Seeing the once majestic palaces and halls reduced to rubble, Chu Bei could not help but frown. What level of illusion was this ruin when it was alive? Ka-cha! Coming to the ruins, there was a crisp sound beneath his feet. It was a stone plaque. It was unknown what kind of stone it was carved from. Even though the palaces and halls had been reduced to ruins, it was still shrouded in mist, without any signs of damage. Driven by curiosity, Chu Bei picked up the stone plaque, and a cool feeling entered his palm. There were 3 large words engraved on it, and each word was emitting a faint light, faintly discernible. These 3 large words were written with strong strokes, with a vigorous aura, like a swimming dragon, vivid and lifelike. "Lord Dog Hall," Chu Bei blurted out. The name of this hall was so fresh and refined that it was unforgettable. When he looked at the back of the stone plaque, his body froze, and his eyebrows could not help but twitch. There was a picture engraved on the back of the stone plaque. A group of strangely dressed people were kneeling in front of a high platform. On the high platform, a Xiaohei dog was like a god, enjoying the worship of the people. That's right, the god dog in the picture was the Xiaohei dog that was roasting meat in the purple cloud illusion. Woof! Just as Chu Bei was in a daze, the Xiaohei dog in the picture seemed to have come alive, and it actually opened its mouth and barked. When Chu Bei looked at the stone plaque again, he saw the Xiaohei dog in the picture baring its teeth at him, revealing a human-like smile, but the smile was filled with ridicule and ridicule. Before Chu Bei could react, the stone plaque shattered with a crack, turning into specks of light and dissipating. "Damn it!" Looking at the stone plaque that disappeared in his hand, and recalling the Xiaohei dog's annoying smile, Chu Bei could not help but curse. "Chu Bei, why did you hear a dog barking here?" Xia Hanyan walked to Chu Bei and asked. "You must have heard wrongly. Why would there be a dog here?" Chu Bei laughed. "Heard wrongly?" Xia Hanyan frowned and looked suspiciously at Chu Bei. She had a feeling that Chu Bei was hiding something from her. "Ninth Elder Chu Bei, quickly look at those." "What are those?" At this moment, Liu Fei shouted. Chu Bei's gaze turned towards the direction that Liu Fei was pointing at, only to see that the ground was filled with huge and terrifying pits, and each pit was tens of feet long. Under Liu Bei's lead, the group ascended to a higher place, and the outline of the huge pits became clearer. "Ninth Elder, are these footprints?" Lu Fei looked at Liu Bei with some fear. Liu Bei kept silent, his eyes filled with astonishment, and his shock was no less than that of the disciples. "Stop looking, let's continue on our way." Liu Bei swept a glance at the ruins behind him, and led the group deeper into the ruins. "Ninth Elder, why did you stop?" Looking at Liu Bei, who had suddenly stopped, Liu Fei asked puzzledly. "Somehow, I feel that there might be an opportunity in this area." Liu Bei glanced at Chu Bei and said to Liu Fei, "There are only 2 broken temples here, what opportunity could there be?" "Ninth Elder, your intuition is definitely wrong," Liu Fei retorted. "If I say there is, then there is." Liu Bei snorted, and then his gaze swept across the group of disciples. "Chu Bei, Liu Fei, Xia Hanyan, Li Chao, Lu Hu, the 5 of you follow me into this temple. The rest of you, search for the temple opposite." "Yes, Ninth Elder." The disciples who were not named by Liu Bei responded, and walked towards the temple opposite at the same time. "All of you follow me." Liu Bei glanced at Chu Bei, Liu Fei and the rest. Chu Bei looked at Liu Bei with a playful expression, and a teasing smile hung on his lips. Just as he was about to follow, Xia Hanyan reached out and stopped him. Chapter 760. "Elder Liu, the temple opposite is much bigger than this one. I'm afraid that there won't be enough manpower over there. I think Chu Bei and I should go over there." As she spoke, Xia Hanyan pulled Chu Bei's arm and walked towards the temple opposite. "Teacher Xia, don't forget that I am the one leading the team. My words are not to be refuted," Liu Bei said with a cold face. "Then why don't we not split up and search the temples one by one?" Xia Hanyan suggested. "No, that's a waste of time. The 3 of you come in with me." Liu Bei pointed to the temple behind him, and his words were laced with anger. Hearing Liu Bei's words, Xia Hanyan's expression became serious. In the beginning, Liu Bei had purposely singled out her, Chu Bei and Liu Fei. Her intuition told her that something was wrong. As for Li Chao and Lu Hu, they were Liu Bei's personal disciples. Thus, she decided to test the waters. Who knew that the other party would be so persistent? This confirmed her guess that the other party must be up to something. Thinking about how Liu Bei and Li Xian had been in frequent contact recently, and even supported him to be the sect leader, Xia Hanyan's face darkened. She had a terrifying guess. Perhaps since Chu Bei had taken part in this mission, the other party had buried a plot. "Ninth Elder, why don't the 3 of us wait for you outside? If there's an opportunity inside, we'll give it to you." Liu Fei seemed to have noticed something and smiled awkwardly. "Are you not going to listen to my orders?" Liu Bei stared intently at Xia Hanyan and Liu Fei. His voice was cold, and a strong aura burst forth. True martial chi fluctuated and his robes fluttered. "Listen, of course we have to listen. The first rule of the Purple Cloud sect is to unconditionally execute the orders of the higher-ups." Chu Bei strode in front of Xia Hanyan and Liu Fei. He smiled at Liu Bei and said, "Let's go in together." "Chu Bei!" Xia Hanyan immediately grabbed Chu Bei's arm and whispered in his ear, "Are you crazy? He may want your life." At this moment, Xia Hanyan was somewhat regretful. In the morning, she should have asked the 4th elder to stop Chu Bei from coming. What made her even angrier was that she had praised Chu Bei yesterday. Why was she as stupid as a pig today? She couldn't even see through such an obvious conspiracy. "Relax, it'll be fine." Just when Xia Hanyan thought that Chu Bei would come to his senses after hearing her words, the other party actually turned his head and flashed his white teeth at her with a heartless smile. Then, he broke free from her restraints and leisurely followed behind Liu Bei. "Stupid pig!" Xia Hanyan gritted her teeth as she stared at Chu Bei's back. She cursed fiercely and followed after him. "Close the door." As soon as Chu Bei and the other 2 entered the temple, Liu Bei signaled his 2 disciples to close the iron gate of the temple and stand on both sides of the gate to prevent anyone from entering. He raised his hand and waved, and a wind blade formed from true martial chi shot out. Looking at the incoming wind blade, Xia Hanyan's eyes narrowed and she hurriedly held the long sword in her hand in front of her chest. Clang! The wind blade hit the long sword and the sword vibrated. Even though it had already dissipated most of the wind blade's power, the remaining power still caused her blood to churn and her figure to retreat. However, at this moment, Liu Bei's figure moved. Before she could stabilize herself, Liu Bei had already appeared in front of her, and his fist wrapped in true martial chi was already heading towards her head. Xia Hanyan's heart sank. Her opponent's violent true martial chi had already poured onto her face and brought about waves of stinging pain. Looking at the fist that was just inches away from her, it was the first time she felt that death was so close to her. Can't you not show off when you don't have much strength? You're looking for trouble for yourself. Serves you right. Just as Xia Hanyan unwillingly closed her eyes and waited for her head to be blasted open, a familiar and extremely unpleasant teasing voice reverberated in her ears. Xia Hanyan was just about to shout out, "Chu Bei, I won't let you off even if I become a ghost," when in the next moment she felt her waist being surrounded by a pair of large hands. Then, there was a loud bang. Another fist appeared in her line of sight, and this fist firmly met the fist of Liu Bei, who wanted her life. In the loud bang, she was hugged by a figure and retreated 2 to 3 steps. Chapter 761. Chu Bei! Chu Bei, you! You! Xia Hanyan struggled out of Chu Bei's embrace, feeling the tyrannical aura that was several times stronger than hers, her eyes filled with disbelief. His entire body stood there like a block of wood, as if his brain had lost all ability to function. He could only stare blankly at Chu Bei with his 2 eyes, and even his speech became stuttering. Damn it, you actually received Elder Liu's. Bah, you actually received Liu Bei's punch. Liu Fei swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva, his mouth opened as wide as a ball. Li Chao and Lu Hu, who were guarding the door, were also dumbstruck, as if they had been hit on the head with a stick, their eyes as wide as copper bells. 2 stars military general! How? How is this possible? Liu Bei's expression was as if he had seen a ghost, or as if he had been struck by lightning in broad daylight, staring at Chu Bei in a daze, his eyeballs almost popping out. Why? You were clearly only a 3-star martial spirit yesterday in the main hall, but it's only been a day and your cultivation has become a 2 stars military general. Liu Bei's face was filled with astonishment, as he questioned Chu Bei. How did you do it? The world is so big, there are many things that you don't understand. Knowing one less thing won't affect you at all. Chu Bei shrugged his shoulders, as he glanced mockingly at Liu Bei. His face suddenly turned cold, and his tone suddenly changed. Anyway, you're going to be a dead man. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Liu Bei was first stunned, then as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world, he raised his head and laughed loudly. After laughing, he looked at Chu Bei with a sinister expression. I have to say, you have indeed hidden your strength well, even Big Brother, and the rest have been deceived by your harmless appearance. If you had been able to endure a little longer, I'm afraid I would have really fallen into your hands. But the current you, a 2 stars military general, is nothing in my eyes. With a cold shout, Liu Bei's robes fluttered, and a tyrannical purple true martial chi surged out. His surroundings seemed to be surging with a monstrous purple wave. Die! A cold syllable reverberated in the air, and Liu Bei once again clenched his fist and punched towards Chu Bei. The surging purple waves let out a deafening roar, and the power of this punch far surpassed the punch that had been thrown towards Xia Hanyan. Nice Hanyan, old Liu, it shouldn't be a problem for you two to deal with Lu Hu and Li Chao, right? Chu Bei glanced at Xia Hanyan and Liu Fei, and the true martial chi also emanated from his body. Facing the roaring purple true star chi wave, he took the long sword from Xia Hanyan's hand and fiercely slashed out. Crack! Liu Bei did not use any weapons. He relied solely on his pair of iron fists to attack Chu Bei's sharp sword. However, the collision only lasted for a second, and the long sword in Chu Bei's hand broke into 2 with a crack. Seeing that Liu Bei's fist was about to land on his chest, Chu Bei hurriedly blocked with his palm. Rumble! Amidst the low muffled sound, Chu Bei was directly shaken back, and a long trace was left behind on the ground under his feet. This is the difference between a 5-star and a 2 stars. Liu Bei proudly raised his fist, like a victorious rooster, and looked at Chu Bei mockingly, and said sarcastically, "Are you desperate?" At the entrance, Xia Hanyan and Lu Fei, who were fighting with Lu Hu and Li Chao, saw that Chu Bei was defeated, and their eyes immediately carried a trace of worry. At the same time, the attacks from their hands became more ferocious, and Lu Hu and Li Chao were forced to retreat. Looking at Liu Bei's arrogant expression, Chu Bei responded with a chuckle. As the other party said, he really just wanted to see how big the difference was between him and a 5-star martial general in terms of pure strength. Now that he knew, it was time for the other party to die. Chu Bei flipped his palm, and with a flash of brilliance, a broad blade engraved with an azure dragon pattern appeared in his hand. Then, Chu Bei looked straight at Liu Bei, and the great dragon blade in his hand danced rhythmically. Wherever the blade passed, it was accompanied by slender black lightning, and endless dark demonic chi surged into the great dragon blade. Amidst the lightning and thunder, the great dragon blade frantically absorbed the demonic chi. The blade gradually formed a blade light that emitted cold chi in all directions, and the blade light quickly grew longer and wider, and was faintly about to materialize. In the end, the great dragon blade, including the blade light, was 3 feet long, and the azure dragon engraved on the hilt seemed to have come to life. The dragon's eyes were constantly opening and closing, and a dragon's roar was faintly heard. As the black lightning around the great dragon blade disappeared, a metallic sound resounded in the temple. At this moment, Chu Bei's heart unexpectedly felt a sense of loss, and a feeling of invincibility involuntarily rose in his heart. This was a kind of confidence, as if with a blade in hand, there was no hero in the world who could compete with him. Although he was not as strong as he thought. Looking at the great dragon blade in Chu Bei's hand that was constantly rising, Liu Bei's face gradually became solemn, and his protective spirit armor became even more powerful. The purple true martial chi was like a raging flame that jumped around his body. Clang! Liu Bei took down the soft sword that was wrapped around his waist. This was a sword with a golden blade. Perhaps due to the pressure of the great dragon blade in Chu Bei's hand, Liu Bei directly used his strongest sword move. The soft sword in his hand danced, and with every slash, the golden light on the blade became stronger and stronger. After accumulating power, Liu Bei took the initiative to attack. At this moment, the soft sword in Liu Bei's hand was like a golden sun, and a blazing golden light filled the sky. Just in time! Chu Bei took a step forward, and the blade was pointed at Liu Bei, as he fiercely swung it down. With the swing of the blade, there were 7 rays of blade light that shot out. The speed of the blade light that appeared later seemed to be slightly faster than the previous one. Very quickly, these blade lights were stacked together. With every stacking, the aura of the blade light would rise to a new level. When the 7 blade lights were stacked together, the black lightning that had originally disappeared reappeared around the blade light. In an instant, the aura rose to an unparalleled peak. Clang! First, there was an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing, and the energy from the collision shook the bluestone tiles below, causing Xia Hanyan and the other 3 who were secretly watching while fighting at the main door to be alarmed. Before the sound of metal clashing could fade away, the golden sword in Liu Bei's hand was shattered by the blade light, scattering all over the ground. The blade light continued to move forward, and with a swish, it directly pierced through the middle of Liu Bei's brows. Following that, it fiercely struck the ground, and with a loud bang, the ground was split open with a huge crack. Turning back to look at Liu Bei, his originally upright body suddenly split into 2 from the middle of his brows to the middle of his legs, and fell to the ground. Brain matter, intestines, 5 viscera and 6 bowels flowed all over the ground. The bloody scene was nauseating and unbearable to look at. Not only Chu Bei's battle, at the main door, the battle between Xia Hanyan, Lu Fei, Li Chao and Lu Hu had also ended. They saw Li Chao and Lu Hu kneeling on the ground, constantly calling out for teacher Xia, and kowtowing to Xia Hanyan, begging for mercy. Chapter 762. Vomit. Xia Hanyan took one look at Liu Bei's body and almost vomited out everything in her stomach. Even Lu Fei, a man, could not help but cover his eyes with his hands, not daring to look at Liu Bei's dead body. It was too scary. As for Li Chao and Lu Hu, they were already trembling in fear, trembling nonstop. Chu Bei, how do you intend to deal with these two people? Xia Hanyan stepped on Li Chao's shoulder and asked for Chu Bei's opinion. If we were killed by Liu Bei, what do you think they would do? Chu Bei smiled and looked at Xia Hanyan. Of course they would testify for Liu Bei and say that we were killed by the spirit beasts. Xia Hanyan replied with certainty. Then how do you think we should deal with them? Chu Bei's gaze suddenly turned cold. Of course we should kill them! Little martial uncle, we were forced by master, no, by Liu Bei. Young martial uncle, please spare us, spare us! Hearing Chu Bei's words, Lu Hu and Li Chao's faces were filled with fear. Their pants were wet from fear and they desperately begged for mercy. However, what awaited them was still a flash of the blade. Chu Bei, what is going on with your cultivation? Xia Hanyan glanced at Lu Hu and Li Chao's bodies and finally asked the question in her heart. Lu Fei, who was at the side, also pricked up his ears. Who doesn't have a secret? I can only tell you that my current strength cannot be separated from the flaming elder that you saw in the illusion. He is considered as my master. Chu Bei did not even blush as he spouted nonsense without blinking. That flaming elder, who is he? Why did he appear in my sex purple cloud illusion? Xia Hanyan continued to ask. I promised my master that I would not tell anyone about him. Chu Bei sighed and pretended to look helpless. All right, then I will not force you. Xia Hanyan was a little disappointed. Eh? Where is the blade that you used just now? Why is it gone? That saber is not simple. It actually allowed you, a 2-stars general, to kill a 5-stars general. Take it out and let me have a look. That saber was also given to me by my master. I can't lend it to others. Chu Bei continued to shift the blame to the fiery old man that he had fabricated. Chu Bei, I can't see through you now. Xia Hanyan suddenly became serious and started to size up Chu Bei again. Sensing Xia Hanyan's gaze, Chu Bei raised his head to look at the sky at a 45-degree angle. His gaze was incomparably deep. People will always grow. Sometimes, forbearance is also a form of attitude. Hearing his heartfelt lament, Xia Hanyan's heart inexplicably surged with a strange feeling. Just as she was about to step forward to comfort him, the other party's next sentence stunned her, and even made her want to torture him. Don't fall in love with me just because you've seen me now. From the beginning to the end, I've only treated you as my martial niece. There's a difference in seniority, so we won't have a future together. Chu Bei's words reverberated in Xia Hanyan's mind for a long time. Xia Hanyan's anger burned more and more fiercely and finally converged into a monstrous and angry syllable. Scram! Her roar shook the sky. Chu Bei, now how are we going to deal with these 3 corpses? And how are we going to explain it to our martial brothers later? Seeing that the atmosphere was not right, Lu Fei tactfully changed the topic. This is easy. Didn't he already think of an excuse for us earlier? I think it's not bad, we can use it. Chu Bei pointed to Liu Bei's corpse and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. After saying that, Chu Bei leisurely walked to the left side of Liu Bei's corpse and bent down to pick up an exquisite sandalwood box. Young martial uncle, what happened? Why are you so flustered? Young martial uncle, don't be anxious. Drink some water and speak slowly. What do you want to say? Don't be afraid, we have more people. Lu Fei, Teacher Xiao, what happened to young martial uncle? He looks like he's in shock. In the temple opposite, a group of disciples of the Purple Cloud sect surrounded Chu Bei, each of them looking anxious. Looking at Chu Bei again, his body was trembling and his face was pale. The frightened expression on his face was as if he had just experienced a hellish nightmare. Ninth senior brother, he. Chu Bei's voice was trembling. He stuttered for a long time but could not say anything. His right hand kept pointing in the direction of the other temple. What happened to ninth elder? Let's go and see. The group of disciples no longer cared about Chu Bei and ran to the opposite temple as fast as they could. When they saw the miserable state of Liu Bei's corpse, they were so scared that their legs went weak. Some people even directly collapsed on the ground and vomited. At that time, ninth senior brother led the 5 of us to search this temple. He found a martial spirit pill by intuition. But who would have thought that this martial spirit pill was guarded by an extremely fierce spirit beast? In the fierce battle, ninth senior brother, he died tragically under the claws of the spirit beast. Fortunately, the spirit beast was also seriously injured by ninth senior brother. After killing Lu Hu and Li Chao in a sneak attack, it immediately fled. Chu Bei's face was covered in snot and tears as he spoke. His serious expression made it seem as if it was the truth. Then Chu Bei held his head with both hands, blue veins popping out, and an expression of regret. I hate it. I hate that I'm not strong enough. If I were a general, maybe ninth senior brother wouldn't have to die. The one who died was that beast. At the end of his words, Chu Bei carefully took out an exquisite sandalwood box from his arms. He opened the box and took out the round pill. This is the martial spirit pill that ninth senior brother risked his life to protect. That damned beast actually killed the ninth elder and my 2 junior brothers. If I see it, I'll skin it alive. Ninth elder died so miserably. Let's bury him on the spot. I hope that in the next life, he can find a good family. Ninth elder, I wish you a safe journey. There are no ferocious beasts in heaven. The disciples' eyes were red as they busied themselves and began to bury the corpses of Liu Bei, Li Chao, and Lu Hu. Chu Bei, your acting skills have really broadened my horizons. You made the fake look more real than the real one. Lu Fei couldn't help but give Chu Bei a thumbs up, praising him repeatedly. To be able to do such a shameless thing so perfectly, I'm afraid you can't find more than a few people in the whole continent. Xia Hanyan looked at Chu Bei with disdain. Chu Bei directly ignored Xia Hanyan's gaze, treating it as if the other party's words were complimenting him in disguise. After a while, Chu Bei handed the martial spirit pill in his hand to Xia Hanyan. I'm already a general, this pill is useless to me. Take it. At least you have some conscience. Xia Hanyan did not stand on ceremony and kept the martial spirit pill in her arms. Chapter 763. Chu Bei seemed to have thought of something and his expression became extremely serious as he said to Xia Hanyan and Lu Fei. Regarding my strength, I hope that you can keep it a secret for me. Xia Hanyan looked at Chu Bei in confusion. With your cultivation as a 2-star military general, you can rightfully assume the position of sect leader. By then, it will also crush Great Elder's ambition. Chu Bei shook his head. Now is not the time to expose myself. Why? Xia Hanyan's eyes were filled with confusion. This concerns the old man's death. Chu Bei said calmly. You mean the death of sect leader is related to? Lu Fei took a deep breath and before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by Chu Bei who gestured for him to keep quiet. You just have to promise me to keep it a secret and leave the rest to me. Chu Bei continued. 15 minutes later. The group of disciples successfully buried Liu Bei and the other 2 and surrounded Chu Bei. With Liu Bei dead, Chu Bei's seniority was the highest. Young martial uncle, 9th elder is dead. Should we continue to search for the illusory realm seed or return to the sect? A disciple asked. Of course we should continue. 9th senior brother is dead, but don't we still have teacher Xia? Chu Bei pointed to Xia Hanyan and said, even if we are no match for the other forces, this does not prevent us from joining in the fun. If we are lucky, what if we can get the seed? Even if we are not fated to get the seed, we can still watch an exciting show when they fight. Hearing young martial uncle's words, it does make sense. Under Chu Bei's bewitchment, the group of disciples nodded their heads in agreement. Hence, with Chu Bei as the leader, the group continued on their journey and headed towards the depths of the historical remains. Heading east, they passed through the mountains and forests, and passed through a piece of barren land. Finally, Chu Bei and the group came to a vast flat area. Although there were very few trees here, the yuan qi between heaven and earth was getting denser. There were countless ancient buildings in this area. Looking from afar, most of the ancient buildings were dilapidated, and there were very few that were intact. Some of the buildings were like Lord Dog's palace, which had turned into ruins. Even so, from the pile of rubble that was piled up like a small hill, one could still imagine how magnificent it used to be. Is this really an illusion? There were actually so many buildings. Could it be that someone had once lived in this illusory realm? And from the looks of it, there are quite a few of them. Lu Fei couldn't help but say as he swept his gaze across the buildings. Xia Hanyan remained silent. Lu Fei's doubts were exactly what she was thinking about. Do you think that could be the seed of illusion we're looking for? Chu Bei suddenly asked. Hearing Chu Bei's words, everyone looked in the direction of Chu Bei's finger. Almost in an instant, everyone's faces were filled with joy and excitement. To the east of the buildings, there was a huge bald mountain. There were no trees in the mountain, nor were there any fierce beasts. Around the bald mountain, there were countless ancient buildings scattered. Above the ring-shaped mountain pass, flames shot up into the sky. Although they were far away, they could still hear the roaring of the boiling magma. Although the agitated magma was still in the mountain pass and had not flowed out, it was already very frightening. Half the sky in the distance was burning red. Above the volcanic crater, a blob of red light floated. It shone brightly as terrifying electric arcs surrounded it. The bald mountain was very tall. When Chu Bei and company arrived at the ring-shaped mountain pass, the ancient buildings below were already the size of ants. Chu Bei, they are all here. Xia Hanyan pursed her lips and said. At present, Li Fire Sex Jui, Divine Sword Sex Quan Guang, Lua Water Sex Xia Hong and the Sacred Regions Han Yang were all here. At this moment, they were scattered around the ring-shaped mountain pass, staring intently at the red light above the mountain pass. Although their eyes were burning, strangely, no one made a move to snatch the illusion seed above the mountain pass. The arrival of Chu Bei and company quickly became the focus of the other four factions. Oh? Why are you the only ones here? Where's your ninth elder? Li Fire Sex Jui frowned. His gaze landed on Chu Bei as he inquired about Liu Bei's whereabouts. His eyes were filled with confusion. Chu Bei said with a sad look. Ninth senior brother encountered a fierce beast on the way here. He was no match for it, and died tragically. After receiving Chu Bei's answer, Zhu Yi, Quan Guang and company looked at each other. On the way here, they did not even see the corpse of a bird, much less a fierce beast. However, Zhu Yi did not continue asking. To them, Liu Bei's death meant that they had one less competitor. This was a good thing. Auntie Hong, this should be the illusion seed, right? Chu Bei pointed at the red light above the mountain pass and looked at Xia Hong with a puzzled look. Why aren't any of you taking action? It's not time yet. Xia Hong glanced at the red light and shook her head. Besides, this illusion seed doesn't seem to be as easy to obtain as we thought. Just as Xia Hong's voice faded, the red light suddenly grew larger and more blinding. Furthermore, it suddenly emitted a sizzling sound. Under everyone's gaze, the red light changed, and following that, an object the size of a fist and the shape of a walnut vaguely appeared. So this is what the illusion seed looks like. It's really eye-opening, Liu Fei said as he stared at the walnut in the red light. Rumble! Suddenly, the illusion seed spewed out a blazing flame. As the flame burned, a series of rumbling sounds resounded. At the same time, a crimson beam of light shot into the sky. In a short moment, half the sky above the volcano was dyed crimson. Everyone, the illusion seed is right in front of you. Who wants to give it a try? Quan Guan took a step forward and looked at the crowd as he said lightly. Since you have suggested it, I'll let you have the chance first, Xia Hong said with a smile. Feeling the strange energy released by the illusion seed, Quan Guang smiled embarrassedly and his gaze fell on Zhu Yi. Well, Brother Zhu arrived first. According to the rules, first come, first served. Brother Zhu will go first. Looking at Quan Guang and the others who were trying to avoid each other, Chu Bei cursed in his heart. They were all old foxes. In the situation where they had not figured out the illusion seed, no one was willing to go first. They were all waiting for each other to be the guinea pig. Forget it. Let me test it out first. After a long stalemate, Zhu Yi sighed and jumped up with the long spear in his hand. Both of his feet tapped on the void. Then, with a wave of the long spear, the sound of the spear was crisp and cold. A translucent icicle was instantly shot out from the tip of the spear. The icicle was so fast that it appeared in front of the illusion seed in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, the icicle pierced the gap in the shell of the illusion seed. Come back! Zhu Yi shouted and flicked the long spear in his hand. The icicle that pierced the illusion seed seemed to have a mind of its own. It changed direction and went straight to Zhu Yi with the illusion seed. Chapter 764. Zhu Yi did not let his guard down. Instead, he kept a small distance from the seed of illusion as if he was waiting for something. Vaguely, he felt that the seed of illusion contained a power that made his heart palpitate. For this reason, he was so cautious. However, after the icicle and the seed of illusion hovered 5 meters away from him for a long time, the latter still did not move, as if it had fallen into a deep sleep. Am I being paranoid? Zhu Yi frowned and stared at the seed of illusion with a puzzled face. After a long while, the seed of illusion was still very quiet and showed no signs of going berserk. At this time, Xie Hong, Quan Guang, and Han Yang looked at each other and seemed to have made the same decision. The true martial qi in their bodies began to surge. As for Chu Bei, his expression did not change, but his eyes did not move away from the seed of illusion. Haha, it seems that we are worrying too much. It is not a threat at all. Thank you for letting me make the first move. Zhu Yi's eyes lit up and he suddenly laughed. At the same time, he reached out to grab the seed of illusion. At this moment, Xie Hong, Quan Guang, and Han Yang's aura rose to the peak. However, just as the three of them were about to fight for it, there was a terrifying boiling sound in the ring-shaped mountain pass below. Then, the magma in the mountain pass boiled and turned into a magma fire dragon that was dozens of feet long. The magma fire dragon flew out of the mountain pass with a monstrous momentum and rushed toward the icicle outside the seed of illusion. Chi chi chi, a series of harsh burning sounds were heard. Almost in an instant, the icicle that Zhu Yi threw out was destroyed by the magma fire dragon. At the same time, the seed of illusion fell on the top of the magma fire dragon's head and swayed back and forth. At this moment, it was cheering like a child. Damn, this seed of illusion is not dead, but alive! Looking at the seed of illusion that was full of spirituality, Lu Fei's eyes flashed, and he could not help but exclaim. Sure enough, it is still a bit difficult to get the seed of illusion. Feeling the energy contained in the magma fire dragon, Chu Bei touched his chin. At the very least, it was certain that with the defensive power of a 5-star general's spirit armor, it was absolutely unable to resist the burning of the magma fire dragon. Looking at the magma fire dragon that suddenly appeared, Zhu Yi's pupils suddenly shrank. He hesitated for a moment, and at the same time, a thick purple spirit armor condensed on the surface of his body. Then, a gust of wind appeared under his feet, and his body moved forward, pointing the tip of his spear directly at the seed of illusion. The seed of illusion seemed to have sensed Zhu Yi's hostility. It rose up and then made a strange trembling sound. The magma dragon below it suddenly attacked Zhu Yi. The magma fire dragon was as fast as lightning. With a whistling sound, it appeared in front of the spear in the blink of an eye. Then, it swung its huge tail. Rumble! With a loud bang, flames filled the sky, and scorching heat waves instantly radiated in all directions. In the next moment, everyone could clearly feel that the temperature in the air had suddenly risen. Amidst the flames, a figure flew out. At this moment, Zhu Yi's body was swaying, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. The long spear in his hand, which was originally filled with a chilling aura, was completely red, as if it had just been taken out from a smelting furnace. It was currently emitting scorching heat waves. Buzz, 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 the seed of illusion, which was suspended not far away, seemed to be mocking the embarrassed Zhu. It swayed around proudly and sang rhythmically. Brother Zhu, thank you so much for taking the lead. Leave the rest to me. Looking at the magma fire dragon that was almost exhausted by Zhu, Quan Guang laughed loudly. Then, his right foot suddenly touched the ground, and his target was the seed of illusion. Damn it, villain! Zhu cursed angrily. Once he was angry, the wound on his chest that was burned by the magma fire dragon became more and more painful. Quan Guang had already arrived in the air. With the spirit armor covering his body, he turned his palm into a claw and grabbed at the seed of illusion that was complacent. Whoosh! A long rainbow streaked across, and the seed of illusion easily avoided Quan Guang's sneak attack. After putting some distance between them, the seed of illusion circled around Quan Guang, and at the same time, the red light on the surface of its body became brighter and brighter. Not good! Suddenly, a bad feeling arose in Quan Guang's heart. However, before he could do anything, the red light around the seed of illusion bloomed. Its body was the size of a football. Then, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. In Quan Guang's rapidly shrinking pupils, the seed of illusion smashed toward him like a meteorite. First, there was the crisp sound of the spirit armor breaking. Then, there was a severe pain in his chest. His body was like a kite with a broken string as he uncontrollably fell down. Boom! With a loud bang, there was a deep pit at the side of the ring-shaped mountain pass. Ha! Looking at Quan Guang in the pit, who was more miserable than him, Zhu laughed heartily. Who else wants to go up and have a try? Xia only stood in the same place and did not answer. He only glanced at the seed of illusion in the air and frowned deeply. Now, it seems that the restriction of this relic only allows cultivators below 5-star martial generals to pass through. It makes sense. Xia Hanyan looked at Chu Bei and guessed. With the cultivation of a martial general, it is impossible to take down this seed of illusion. I'm afraid that one has to be at least a 3-star martial king. If that's the case, didn't we come here for nothing? Those who have the strength to take down the seed of illusion cannot enter, and those who can enter do not have the strength. Lu Fei spread out his hands. Are you kidding us? Chu Bei smiled and did not say a word. His gaze fell on the sanctuary's saint, Han Yang. The other party was ready to make a move. Since the seniors are not making a move for the time being, let this junior go up and have a try. Under everyone's gaze, Han Yang carried a black bag on his back. Stepping on a long sword, he slowly flew toward the seed of illusion. Han Yang's flying speed was not fast. As he approached, he formed a seal with his hands. When he finished forming the seal, Han Yang lifted the long sword under his feet. The sword was like lightning, speeding forward. Just as it was about to pierce the seed of illusion, it split into 9. In a moment, 9 identical long swords were distributed in a ring, surrounding the seed of illusion in the middle. Then, at the tip of the 9 long swords, there was a flash of silver light at the same time. In the next moment, there was a sudden distortion in the small space where the seed of illusion was located. Immediately, a gray fog rapidly emerged and finally condensed into a gray prison layer that was more than a foot thick. The inner surface of the prison layer was densely covered with silver lightning, and the crackling sound of electrodes was incessant. This is the elemental energy cage. As soon as the gray prison layer appeared, the seriously injured Zhu Yi and Quan Guang blurted out at the same time. Their voices were filled with shock. As expected of the current generation's saint. I didn't expect him to be able to use this move at such a young age. Xia Hong looked at Han Yang's back in astonishment. Obviously, she and Zhu Yi and Quan Guang recognized the move that Han Yang used. Chapter 765. Although the holy region was extremely mysterious, the experts in the region had used some tricks outside before. This elemental confinement cage was one of them that people were familiar with. Chu Bei, when we go out later, why don't you spar with him? Just use the saber that your esteemed teacher gave you. Xia Hanyan tugged at Chu Bei's arm and stretched out her hand to point at Han Yang as she suddenly spoke. Chu Bei rolled his eyes and looked at Xia Hanyan as if he was looking at an idiot. He didn't know what she was thinking. What was the point of doing something that didn't benefit him? In the air, the appearance of the elemental confinement cage seemed to have completely angered the illusion seed. Perhaps in response to the opponent's provocation, the illusion seed actually copied Han Yang's sword and split into 9. Then, they formed a circle and spun rapidly. At the same time, the soaring red light and the silver light in the cage intertwined, and a piercing sound could be heard. Boom, boom, boom! In just 10 seconds, the 1-foot-thick layer of the gray cage was smashed into pieces and turned into countless gray light pieces. Han Yang, who had been calm all along, was finally moved and his expression became serious. In the next moment, he waved his right hand and a long sword flew back into his hand. Absolute beginning divine concealment! As he shouted, Han Yang held the long sword and his body danced in an orderly manner. Every time the long sword was waved, a huge aura would condense on the tip of the sword. This aura continued to accumulate until the golden sword light was as bright as the sun. What a monster! Zhu Yi, Quan Guang and Xie Hong were dumbfounded as they watched Han Yang's dancing figure. At this moment, they finally understood why the other party's elders dared to say that he was invincible below the martial king level. The other party was worthy of this saying. Absolute beginning divine concealment was a sword technique that only the successors of each generation in the holy region could cultivate. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to cultivate. Even among the successors of each generation, there were very few who could cultivate it. The reason why the sacred domains, absolute beginnings divine concealment, was so famous was because the holy son of that generation had killed a 2-star martial king with the cultivation of a 4-star general, who was 7 small realms above him. Chu Bei reevaluated Han Yang. He had to admit that Han Yang was indeed quite talented in cultivation without the system. This was especially true for the Grand Primordium Divine Concealment. It was similar to the heaven-defying 7 Devil Saber in terms of concept. As the number of times Han Yang brandished his sword increased, the golden light at the tip of the sword increased. When the sword momentum reached its peak, the sword light actually intertwined into a qilin that looked like it was cast in gold. Amidst the humming of the sword, the golden qilin, which was formed by the sword rays, pounced on the fantasy realm seed at lightning speed. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The illusion seed seemed to have sensed the danger. After making a strange trembling sound, its body shook violently. At this moment, the magma in the ring-shaped mountain pass below began to surge. The rolling magma seemed to be under control as it crazily surged into the fist-sized fantasy seed. In an instant, the dark gray shell of the seed turned crimson red. Then, like a shooting star, he tore through the void and faced the golden qilin head-on. Bang! At the point of collision, it was as if fireworks were blooming, extremely gorgeous. Terrifying shockwaves rippled out like waves, causing the air to sizzle. The golden qilin, which was formed by intertwining sword rays, opened its bloody mouth unwillingly. Then, it twisted until it turned into a rain of light and dissipated in the void. After destroying the golden qilin, the illusion seed didn't seem to be ready to let Han Yang go. With a swoosh, it pierced through the void and appeared in front of the ladder. Han Yang's pupils shrank. Without any hesitation, he immediately held the sword in his hand in front of his chest. With a crisp clang, a long and thin crack appeared on the sword body. Under the huge impact, Han Yang's body also shot toward the ground like a cannonball. Perhaps for the sake of his face, or to prevent his back from hitting the ground, just as he was about to hit the ground, Han Yang suddenly flipped over like a carp and swung out a sword aura at the same time. Under the situation where the two forces clashed, Han Yang stood up from the ground with difficulty. When he raised his head to look at the illusion seed again, his expression was extremely solemn, as if he was facing an unprecedented opponent. Even the absolute beginning divine concealment can't do anything to it? With the force of its impact, at least a 6-star martial king can take it. Could it be that this is a wasted trip? Is there no way to take it down? Why don't we go back and see what the sect master and the rest have to say? Quan Guang, Zhu Yi, and Xie Hong looked at each other and sighed with a helpless expression. Chu Bei, why don't you go up and try? The illusion seed is right in front of us. If we get it and raise it, our sect will have another illusion. Xiao Hanyan shook Chu Bei's arm. Her eyes lit up. And I dare to conclude that the level of this illusion is definitely higher than the purple cloud illusion. With this illusion, our sect's strength will at least increase by 2 levels. The 4 of them can't do it. Do you think I can? Chu Bei shrugged and asked. Don't you have a teacher behind you? Didn't he leave you any way to contact him? If you give him a signal now, with his strength, he will definitely be able to take down this seed. Didn't he give you all the illusion jade he got from the illusion? Recalling the flaming old man she saw in the illusion, Xia Hanyan believed in the other party's methods. As for the so-called restriction of the ruins, it would definitely not be a problem for the other party. After all, the other party could ignore the restriction of the living illusion. Chu Bei chuckled and ignored Xia Hanyan. At the edge of the ring-shaped crater, Han Yang stared at the illusion seed for a long time. His expression was incomparably conflicted, as if he was hesitating about something. After about 30 seconds, he took a deep breath and put down the black package behind him. Magic puppet! When they saw what was in the package, Quan Guang, Zhu Yi, and Xie Hong exclaimed at the same time. The astonishment in their eyes was even greater than when they saw Han Yang use the absolute beginning divine concealment. There were 3 great treasures in the sacred region. One of them was the magic puppet made by the first sacred lord of the sacred region. Although the magic puppet did not have much strength, once it was injected into the true martial stone, it would absorb the energy in the true martial stone for its own use. It could be said that the magic puppet would be able to unleash powerful energy based on the amount of energy in the true martial stone. It could even be used after compressing the energy in the true martial stone, which would be even more terrifying. It was also because of this that when Quan Guan and the other 2 saw the magic puppet in Han Yang's package, they lost their composure. In the end, the sacred region was the most well-prepared party. They even let Han Yang bring along the treasures of the sacred region. When they saw Han Yang take out 7 pieces of true martial stone. No, it was 7 pieces of illusion jade, their expressions were completely stiff. Chapter 766. Damn it, he can't be using 7 fantasy jades as a power source, right? Isn't that too extravagant? Lu Fei exclaimed with his mouth wide open. Even if we really get the seed, is it really worth it to use 7 fantasy jades as a price? Xia Hanyan frowned slightly and murmured with surprise. Chu Bei did not say anything, but he had a preliminary understanding of the foundation of the sanctuary. Compared to the Purple Cloud sect, it was much more powerful. In fact, Han Yang did the same. He swung his hands and the 7 fantasy jades in his palms turned into 7 streams of light that shot into the body of the Yuan energy magic puppet. In the mechanical sound, the magic puppet's body shook violently as if it had a life of its own, and a black fog emerged from its body. When the black fog dissipated, the Yuan energy magic puppet seemed to have evolved, and its body was covered with a layer of black fog armor. At the same time, 2 red lights shot out from its eyes. Then, the Yuan energy magic puppet's body made a series of friction sounds, and a violent and terrifying aura spread out. Feeling the terrifying Yuan energy fluctuations released by the magic puppet, the faces of all the disciples, including Quan Guang and the rest, changed. Roar! A loud roar that seemed to come from ancient times resounded in this space. The terrifying sound waves reverberated around the bulb mountain, and even the building tiles below were shattered. At this moment, the Yuan energy magic puppet was like a wild beast that had awakened from a deep sleep. The roar was filled with heart-palpitating cruelty and brutality, as if it was filled with endless destruction and killing. The source of the roar seemed to represent the world's most terrifying disaster. Even with Master's cultivation, I'm afraid he won't be able to win against this magic puppet. Xia Hanyan swallowed her saliva and looked at the Yuan energy magic puppet in horror. Chu Bei did not refute. His father's cultivation was at the peak of martial king, and the strength of this magic puppet was not far from it. When Han Yang bit his index finger and dripped a drop of blood on the magic puppet's forehead, the magic puppet shot out with a swoosh. In an instant, it appeared in front of the fantasy seed. The fantasy seed seemed to be aware of the danger, and a red light flashed and fled into the distance. It was a pity that in terms of speed, the source energy magic puppet was superior. With a snap, his two hands sandwiched the fantasy seeds in the middle. Buzz, 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 the seed of illusion began to vibrate with a human-like fear. Fire dragons kept flying out of the magma below. However, these fire dragons that could seriously injure Zhu Yi were nothing in front of the magic puppets. Black smoke gushed out from the soles of the magic puppet's feet, instantly dispersing the scorching fire dragons. Under Han Yang's control, the magic puppet slowly descended from the sky with the illusion seeds in its hands. Zhu Yi, Quan Guang, and Xia Hong looked at each other. Although they were all greedy for the seed of illusion, they could only stare at it helplessly. Not to mention the existence of the origin energy puppet, just Han Yang, who could use the absolute beginning divine concealment, was not someone they could deal with. From the looks of it, the illusory realm seed will belong to the sacred region. But the price is not small. 7 fantasy jades. Xia Hanyan sighed. Niece Hanyan, I need to pee. I need to relieve myself. With that, Chu Bei left quickly. If he did not make a move, the seed of illusion that the system wanted would really fall into the hands of others. Seniors, Han Yang will bid farewell to all of you. If you are free in the future, you are welcome to visit the sacred region. I, Han Yang, will be a good host. Since the seniors in my family are in a hurry to get the seed, I will not stay any longer. However, just as Han Yang stepped on the flying sword and bid farewell to Quan Guang and the rest, and was about to leave with the source energy magic puppet and the seed of illusion, a golden light flashed from afar and appeared in front of him in an instant. This was a ball of dazzling golden light, and there was only a head in the golden light. It was an old man, with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. You! Who are you? Why are you blocking my way? Han Yang took a step back and looked at the strange guest in front of him cautiously. Since birth, he had never seen an existence that was still alive with only a head missing from the rest of the body. At the ring-shaped mountain pass below, Quan Guang, Zhu Yi and the rest of the disciples looked as if they had seen a ghost at this moment. Their eyes stared at the head in the air, as if they wanted to say something, but because their brains stopped responding, they could not shout out. Chu Bei, your teacher has appeared. Perhaps Xia Hanyan was the only exception in the entire place. She was excitedly waving at the head in the air, as if she was greeting him. After shouting Chu Bei's name, she realized that the other party was not in a hurry to pee. In the air, Han Yang, who was standing on the flying sword, turned his head to look at Xia Hanyan. After frowning, his gaze returned to the head in front of him. Of all things to be a thief at such a young age! The head let out a hoarse voice with a sigh. I wonder what Senior means by this. Are you trying to say that this seed has an owner? Han Yang squinted his eyes and looked straight at the head, his body tensed up. That's right, it is mine. The old man with only one head nodded. Senior must be joking with me, right? As everyone knows, the things in the ruins are all ownerless. And even if it really is yours, why didn't you appear earlier? Why did you wait until I used the 7 illusory jades? Han Yang's voice became colder and colder, forcibly suppressing the anger in his voice. The old man coughed dryly and could not reply for a moment. At first, because he wanted to get the illusory realm seed without using the glint fruit, he had been waiting. But in the end, the illusory realm seed was about to be snatched away by someone else. Senior, I am the current saint of the sanctuary, Han Yang. This seed is something that the elders of the sanctuary have taken a fancy to. If possible, please do us a favor. Han Yang cupped his fist towards Chu Bei. Before seeing through the details of the old man in front of him, he first introduced himself. So it's the saint of the sanctuary. The old man deliberately dragged his voice and then changed his tone. What does it have to do with me? My things, even the heavenly king can't take them away from me. As the mocking voice fell, the golden light behind the old man transformed into a giant palm and directly slapped the magic puppet. Han Yang's pupils shrank and he hurriedly controlled the magic puppet to meet the attack. Roar! The magic puppet let out a deep roar and then its body was covered in black flames, turning into a black rainbow to meet the giant golden palm. Bang! The moment the source energy magic puppet's black flames touched the giant golden palm, it turned into nothingness with a chi-chi sound. In the next moment, the giant golden palm bombarded the magic puppet's body. Accompanied by a muffled impact, the magic puppet directly fell to the ground below, creating a several-meter-deep crater. The 7 illusory jades in the magic puppet rolled out, already dim. Soon, Chu Bei only felt a warm current spread all over his body. Then, he magically discovered that his divine sense was actually communicating with the illusion seed. His divine sense went deep into the seed of illusion. The other party was like a small world, but it was just a patch of chaos and there was nothing inside. Chu Bei looked at the source energy magic puppet in his hand and with a thought, the source energy magic puppet disappeared in a flash of light. As expected, it has the function of a spatial ring. Chu Bei rubbed his palms. It would be more convenient for him in the future. Woof, woof, woof! Just as Chu Bei was about to secretly return to the group, he heard the sound of a dog barking. At the same time, he felt something biting his right ankle. Chu Bei frowned. He was very familiar with this dog barking. He looked down again. F***ck, isn't that Xiao Hei dog biting his pant leg? Tell me honestly, what kind of dog are you? Chu Bei picked up Xiao Hei dog and questioned it. This Xiao Hei dog was amazing. Not only could it roast meat to eat, it could also spit out fireballs and become invisible. It could even project a projection after the illusion ended. What was even more amazing was that there were many people worshipping it, and even built a hall for it, the Lord Dog Hall. Also, how did you find me? Tell me everything. Chu Bei grabbed Xiao Hei dog's neck with one hand and raised his fist with the other. He smiled sinisterly and said, You have seen my methods. Woof, woof, woof. Xiao Hei dog rolled its eyes at Chu Bei with a look of disdain. Then, it kept pointing to the east with its paw. Is there a treasure over there? Chu Bei looked suspiciously at Xiao Hei dog and asked tentatively. Woof! Xiao Hei dog barked and nodded heavily. If there is a treasure, why did you tell me? I don't think we have such a good relationship. Chu Bei looked at Xiao Hei dog with vigilance. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that it was strange. He felt that it was plotting something. Woof, woof, woof. Xiao Hei dog's barking became aggrieved. Its big round eyes were actually filled with tears. Don't look at me like that. When he met Xiao Hei dog's pitiful eyes, Chu Bei felt a chill and goosebumps appeared all over his body. Forget it, I will take it that you are telling the truth this time. In fact, he was still very suspicious of Xiao Hei dog's intentions. However, his fruit's ability had not disappeared, so there was no harm in making a trip. Woof! Seeing Chu Bei move, Xiao Hei dog barked excitedly. Then, it opened its mouth and spat out a light blue halo that covered Chu Bei's body. I didn't expect you to have this ability. Chu Bei looked at Xiao Hei dog in astonishment. The light blue halo that it spat out could actually completely isolate his aura from the outside world. It was as if it had assimilated with this world. Xiao Hei dog raised its head and wagged its tail. Its proud expression seemed to be telling Chu Bei, This Lord Dog has many powerful methods. Under Xiao Hei dog's lead, Chubei stopped in front of a gloomy palace. The palace did not have a door. It was just a thin layer of light. "You want me to go in?" Looking at Xiaohei Dog's encouraging gaze, even with the glint fruit's ability, Chubei was still a little flustered. Xiaohei Dog seemed to be a little impatient. It actually took the lead and went through the light curtain. Chubei hesitated for a moment, but also went through the light curtain. Looking at the scene in front of him, Chubei was stunned. How was this a palace? It could be said that it had formed a small world. Not far ahead, there was a huge lake. Looking at it, there seemed to be no end to it. High up in the sky, there was actually a round moon, and its bright moonlight was pouring down. Under the illumination of the moonlight, the hazy mist rising from the surface of the lake looked like a celestial being. Looking over, one could still vaguely see the peach blossoms fluttering in the wind and falling into the lake. It was like a fairyland. Walala! The gurgling sound of water could be heard. Chubei subconsciously went around a mountain rock. Perhaps it was because of the mountain rock that he could only see the lake in the distance. But now, when he stood by the lake's surface was clearly visible to him. Chapter 768. Glancing at the spot where the water splashed, Chubei's expression abruptly changed. His mouth was wide open and his eyes were wide open, showing his astonishment at the scene before him. In the lake, a woman had her back facing Chubei's direction, half of her body submerged in the water. Her snow-white and jade-like skin, her sparkling and translucent back, the faintly discernible beautiful back that was just covered by the lake water, her slender and moving waist, her snow-white fragrant shoulders, and her wet long hair, all of this together outlined a scene that would make one vomit blood. Looking at the scene in the lake, Chubei's heart was filled with mixed feelings, overturning rivers and seas, and surging waves. If he had to use a sentence to describe his current mood, thousands of words could be combined into 2 words. I. Perhaps because of the position, Chubei was unable to see the woman's appearance clearly, but just her flawless back was enough to firmly attract his attention. The sparkling and translucent water droplets flowed all over the woman's body under the guidance of her slender hands, shining brightly. In the hazy water vapor, the woman occasionally picked up a peach blossom that fell on the water surface and gently patted it on her soft and smooth skin. Looking at it with rapt attention, every movement of the woman was incomparably beautiful, as if she was enjoying the nourishment of the lake water. Hua hua hua! The woman in the lake slowly rose. First, her beautiful back was completely displayed in Chubei's field of vision, followed by her slender thighs and straight calves. Just as Chubei was struggling in his heart whether he should continue to be a beast or not, Xiaohei stood up like Tairitian, patting his calf with one paw and pointing at the snow-white woman in the lake with the other paw. At the same time, it raised its eyebrows at him in a human-like manner, as if asking him, "Are you enjoying it?" Chubei had also interacted with Xiaohei several times, so he had some understanding of this dog's temperament. How could he not understand the look in its eyes? However, just as he was thinking about how to use his actions and expressions to answer the other party's question, Xiaohei suddenly jumped back a distance. Furthermore, it bared its white teeth and waved its paw at him, as if it was bidding him farewell. Looking at Xiaohei's series of actions, especially the sinister and terrifying smile at the end, Chubei's heart suddenly turned cold. As expected, in the next second, Xiaohei opened its mouth and inhaled, and the blue halo around him that isolated the aura of the outside world disappeared. What followed was the deafening barking of a dog. It was as if the little black puppy had used all of its strength to howl out. Before the bark faded, Xiaohei had already disappeared, leaving Chubei by the lakeside, a dumbfounded look on his face. A chill. Who? An ice-cold voice resounded in this world, shaking Chubei's soul. At this moment, Chubei felt his entire body turn cold, as if he was being targeted by a venomous snake. Fortunately, this bone-piercing chill dissipated the moment he used the power of Source Heaven. In his line of sight, the lake water churned, and golden pillars of water rose around the woman. The pillars of water connected with each other, and soon completely covered the woman. The rumbling sound receded, and when the golden pillars of water disappeared, the woman in the lake turned around. At this moment, the woman had already put on a layer of black and purple gauze, and walked slowly on the water with clear steps. Behind her, strange black runes flickered in the water. Beautiful, exceptionally beautiful. Unlike Mu Shuer's beauty that made people want to get close to her, the beauty of the woman in front of him was a beauty that kept strangers away. In the words of his previous life, it was the beauty of a cold and aloof elder sister. The woman's long black hair was wet and draped over her shoulders, and her jade-like cheeks were dripping with water. She was like a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water. You deserve to die. The woman coldly stared at Chu Bei, killing intent evident in her bright diamond-like eyes. Hugh. Chu Bei took a deep breath, trying his best to calm himself down. Miss, if I tell you that I didn't mean to barge in here, but that a Xiaohei dog tricked me, would you believe me? When he said that, Chu Bei felt a little guilty. Looking around, he could not even see a single strand of dog fur, much less the black puppy. But you saw it. The woman's voice did not contain the slightest emotion. She quietly stood on the lake, calmly looking at Chu Bei. Chu Bei did not dare to look straight into the woman's eyes, not because of her extremely restrained cultivation, but because of the 4 simple words she said. Regardless of the cause and effect, he had indeed seen it. Furthermore, he had seen it for a long time. She was a big girl, yet she was seen by him for no reason at all. For a moment, Chu Bei did not dare to reply. I am willing to take responsibility for you. After holding it in for a long time, Chu Bei spat out 7 powerful syllables, his expression extremely serious. Die. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the woman frowned, her beautiful eyes suddenly focused. Suddenly, a terrifying cold aura brushed past Chu Bei's body. This feeling caused Chu Bei's entire body to stiffen. The bone-piercing coldness that had disappeared earlier reappeared, going straight into the depths of his mind. At this moment, Chu Bei felt as if his blood had stopped flowing, as if his heart had stopped beating. It was as if he had lost consciousness. So ruthless. Enduring the woman's powerful pressure, Chu Bei stared at her and inexplicably took 2 steps back. At the same time, the golden light around his body dissipated, disintegrating the woman's pressure. Oh! Seeing that Chu Bei was still conscious under her mental pressure, the woman muttered, a trace of surprise flashing across her brows. The woman hovered above the lake. Her face was still extremely beautiful, but her temperament had completely changed. Previously in the lake, although Chu Bei felt that she was unapproachable, there was still a hint of elegance and holiness, like a fairy. However, the feeling now was the complete opposite. It was a cold-blooded and ruthless feeling. In particular, the bone-piercing cold aura had been displayed to the extreme from the woman's body. Miss, your eyes. In the stifling atmosphere, Chu Bei's throat squirmed. The woman's originally bright and resplendent pupils were rapidly turning black at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was a kind of deep black, abnormally black. Chu Bei discovered that he could still use Genesis heaven power under the gaze of the woman's black eyes, but the true martial chi in this dimension seemed to be restrained. Die! The same syllable rang out in Chu Bei's mind again. The woman raised her right hand, black mist surging in her palm, gradually forming a black lotus. Swoosh! The lotus was extremely fast, piercing through space in an instant and appearing in front of Chu Bei. Sensing the terrifying energy contained in the black lotus, Chu Bei frowned. He had no choice but to face it head-on. Without hesitation, he immediately formed a golden palm and slammed it towards the lotus. Chapter 769. Rumble. The black lotus and the golden palm collided, creating an earth-shattering boom. The space around the collision tore apart as countless pitch-black cracks extended outwards. Monstrous waves were set off in the lake water below, and one after another, huge whirlpools appeared. The black lotus and the golden palm were in a stalemate for a few moments before their energy was exhausted. Miss, even if I really saw your body, you don't need to kill me. Besides, I already said I'm willing to take responsibility for you. What else do you want? Chu Bei's voice was filled with helplessness as his body left the ground and stood at the same height as the woman. Perhaps because of Chu Bei's words, the woman's face darkened even more and the killing intent in her eyes seemed to be on the verge of materializing. The woman glared at Chu Bei in disgust before forming a seal with her slender hands. The sky immediately darkened as snake-shaped lightning bolts appeared. The corners of Chu Bei's mouth twitched as he looked up at the vast expanse of dark clouds above. It was still the same black lotus, but there wasn't just one this time. Instead, there were hundreds and thousands of them emerging from the dark clouds. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It was as if a rain of black lotuses was falling from the sky, but these lotuses all had a target: Chu Bei. Genesis Sky Jewel Magatama. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Bei's hands moved quickly in the air. He drew with his hands, drawing a square area. Tens of millions of light bullets suddenly surged out from the square area that Chu Bei had circled out. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The light bullets were as dense as raindrops. With a wave of Chu Bei's hand, they pounced towards the oncoming group of lotuses at lightning speed. Bang, bang, bang. A series of explosions rang out in the air as gold and black intertwined. Although they weren't as beautiful as fireworks, their power was thousands of times greater. Run! After the Genesis Sky Jewel Magatama was sent out, Chu Bei didn't linger and directly dashed towards the light screen he had come from. He really couldn't bring himself to attack a girl whose entire body he had seen. Of course, the main reason was that the girl was very strong. So strong that even in his current state, he wasn't confident he could defeat her. The most terrifying thing was that there was a limit to the amount of Genesis Heaven power he could store, and it was about to run out. If they didn't leave now, they would really lose their lives in this plane. However, just as Chu Bei was about to slip away, the woman caught up with him and tossed him a blue square box. Without waiting for Chu Bei to pass through the light curtain, the blue square box suddenly expanded, instantly turning into a huge rhombus-shaped space. Coincidentally, this space enveloped Chu Bei and the woman. You can't escape. You must die. The woman seemed to have seen through Chu Bei's thoughts and said coldly. Chu Bei pressed his right hand against the rhombus-shaped spatial barrier and punched it with all his might. However, the spatial barrier did not budge at all. There was not even the slightest ripple. You can't break it. The woman walked toward Chu Bei step by step. Considering that he didn't have much time left, and that the ascendant weapon was extremely hard, Chu Bei simply gave up on the idea of running away. What he needed to do now was to defeat the woman in front of him before his Genesis Heaven power ran out. Fistbone meteorite. As the indifferent voice faded, Chu Bei's body was suddenly covered in golden light, forming a huge armor that was over 100 feet tall. Chu Bei stood in the center of the light armor and appeared above the woman in one step. As soon as the shout faded, the golden fist swung out by the golden armored giant turned pitch black, like a huge black iron block. Black aura chi surged towards the woman like a surging wave with terrifying momentum. Everywhere it passed, the void was shattered into pieces, and rumbling sounds could be heard. Faintly, purple lightning appeared on the golden armor, crackling and rattling incessantly. Black Lotus Overlay Seal. Looking at the iron fist above her, the woman's expression finally changed, and a hint of graveness appeared in her pitch-black bewitching eyes. As the shout faded, 100-foot-tall black lotus mark appeared behind the woman. The lotus spun frantically, and with every revolution, the billowing black aura around it became more solid. When it stopped spinning, the woman's slender hand pulled it and directly pushed it towards the iron fist above. Rumble! Two different black energies intertwined and exploded. The aftermath of the collision brought out a long rainbow, like a surging river, that extended outwards, and even the rhombus-shaped spatial barrier shook. What the hell, she can even take that! Chu Bei's chi and blood churned as he stared at the woman below in astonishment. He had the urge to curse out loud. In terms of shock, the woman below was even more shocked than Chu Bei. From the beginning to the end, she didn't expect her opponent to be so strong. At first, she thought her opponent was an ant that she could crush with one finger. She didn't expect her opponent's strength to be comparable to hers. What puzzled her was that her opponent's aura was very strange, and it was a kind of energy she had never encountered before. A look of anxiety appeared on Chu Bei's face. His figure flickered as he threw punch after punch at the woman. What made him feel helpless was that his opponent blocked every punch, although she didn't seem to be having an easy time either. However, he wasn't actually fighting a woman, but a battle against time. Unable to defeat the woman below, the anxiety on Chu Bei's face intensified. After a moment of contemplation, he summoned the great dragon saber with his Genesis Heaven power. He had an idea, but he had never tried it before. He didn't know if it would bring about any uncertain consequences, but he had no choice but to do so. Light armor, heaven-defying seven-demon saber, Chu Bei wielded the great dragon saber and danced according to the circulation route in his mind. At the same time, he frantically squeezed his Genesis Heaven power into the great dragon saber. Gradually, a saber light appeared in the hand of the huge golden armor around Chu Bei's body. The great dragon saber frantically absorbed the surrounding golden light, and its blade gradually turned a dazzling gold. Under the support of the Genesis Heaven power, the azure dragon engraved on the saber hilt seemed to be covered in a layer of golden armor. The dragon opened its eyes and let out a dragon roar. Chu Bei swung the saber down. He felt all the energy in his body being sucked dry. The giant golden saber light crushed the void and slashed towards the woman below. The azure dragon swam within the saber light, and a dragon roar shook the void. Feeling the terrifying aura above her, the woman's graceful body trembled slightly. This power made her heart palpitate. Investiture of the gods, rash omen, the woman had no time to hesitate. She spat out a mouthful of blood onto her two fair palms. After quickly forming a seal, she slammed her palms together. Suddenly, the void exploded, and a black iron gate engraved with a lotus flower emerged from the crack and blocked the woman's path. Clang! The soul-shaking sound of metal clashing lasted for several seconds. A saber and a door. The light produced by the collision illuminated the originally dim world. The light gradually dissipated, and the saber and gate disappeared. Chu Bei immediately used his observation hockey to perceive everything that was happening outside. Rumble! The woman's palm landed firmly on Chu Bei's forehead, and the pitch-black lotus exploded. The woman looked at Chu Bei's corpse and frowned. Under her palm, the other party's clothes were not even torn. With confusion, the woman's hand swept over Chu Bei's corpse, and her brows gradually relaxed. Well, I'll leave you with an intact body. The woman waved her hand, and the diamond-shaped space barrier around her turned back into a blue square box and returned to her hand. Then, her slender leg kicked Chu Bei's waist, kicking the corpse to the shore of the lake. Then, she floated away and disappeared at the end of the lake. After sensing with his mind and confirming that the woman was far away, Chu Bei's consciousness relaxed. However, at this moment, he still couldn't move, and the time limit of suspended animation has not disappeared. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. At this moment, Chu Bei sensed a living being appear in front of him. Woof, woof! That damned Xiaohei dog is back. After looking around vigilantly, it hopped over to Chu Bei's corpse and barked proudly as it dug a deep hole. This Xiaohei dog circled around Chu Bei's corpse and pushed Chu Bei into the deep hole with its two front paws. Then, it started to dig again, and after filling the hole with Chu Bei's corpse, it jumped and jumped on it. Woof! After doing all this, Xiaohei dog barked happily and jumped into the lake with a swoosh. When it came out of the lake, there were 2 big fat fish in its mouth. After finding some stones to build a grill, Xiaohei dog spat out a fireball from its mouth and started to roast the fish with ease. As time passed, the fragrance of the fish gradually spread in the air. Chubei, who was buried in the hole, was so angry that his divine sense was about to explode. For him, every second was torture. He was counting down to his death. Another 3 minutes passed. Woof! Xiaohei dog sniffed, rubbed its paws, and barked contentedly. However, just as it picked up the roasted fish and opened its mouth to enjoy the delicious food, the hole behind it suddenly exploded. The sudden explosion scared Xiaohei dog so much that its whole body trembled. The roasted fish in its paws fell to the ground. However, before it could escape far away, a powerful hand had already grabbed its throat. Woof, 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 woof. When it saw Chubei's appearance, Xiaohei dog's pupils suddenly shrank. It clamped its tail tightly and barked nonstop, its voice filled with fear. In addition to fear, there was also confusion in its eyes. It seemed that it did not understand why Chubei was not dead. Chubei's left hand grabbed Xiaohei dog's neck and pressed it to the ground. His right hand was clenched into a fist, and his true martial chi was wrapped around it. Chapter 771. He was really hungry. But then again, this little black dog's culinary skills were pretty good. After finishing the fish in a few bites, only the bones were left. Chubei twisted his neck and stretched his muscles before walking towards the light screen. Not long after Chubei passed through the light screen, a strange scene happened above the lake. A pitch-black and strange palace appeared in the void. There was a stone tablet in front of the door of the palace. There were 3 dazzling words engraved on the stone tablet. Lord Dog's Hall. Inside the main hall, a dark light poured out and shone on the black puppy's corpse. Then, Xiaohei dog's corpse, which had been turned into a meat patty in the pit, expanded and recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. After 2 minutes, Xiaohei dog suddenly rolled like a carp and became lively again. At the same time, the Lord Dog's hall above the lake disappeared. Woof, woof! Xiaohei dog glanced at the fish bones left by Chubei on the ground. With a claw, it threw it into its mouth and chewed. After eating, it barked wildly in the direction of the light screen. Its unwilling howls were filled with anger. Outside the Sunset Valley. Chubei, are you going to pee until the end of time? When Xia Hanyan saw Chubei, the worried look on her face disappeared and was replaced by a look of anger. I thought you had died in there. After the small one, there was a big one. Hee, I had no choice but to delay for a while. Chubei scratched his head and lied. Where are the other forces? They have already left. Lu Fei patted Chubei's arm. The saint of the sanctuary, Han Yang, said before he left that he would visit you when he was free. Why? Chubei deliberately showed a surprised expression. Lu Fei cleared his throat and dragged out his tone. Do you know that in the end, it was your teacher who snatched the fantasy seed from Han Yang's hands? Not only that, your teacher also took the elemental energy magic puppet that Han Yang brought. What? Master actually did such a thing? Chubei cooperated and shouted, revealing an expression of disbelief. In fact, the illusion seed was already lying in his mind and had opened up a small world for him. Your teacher didn't give you the illusion seed? Xia Hanyan looked at Chubei suspiciously. Of course not. Chubei shook his head without hesitation. I didn't even see his face. When your teacher comes to you next time, see if you can get the seed. After all, if the illusion seed can be raised, it would be a new illusion. For a sect, it is priceless. Xia Hanyan stroked her hair. No problem. Chubei casually. If he had not met the black puppy this time, his journey would have been perfect. Although he had used up nearly all of his Genesis Heaven power, he had still obtained the illusion seed and the origin energy magic puppet, which was not a loss. Chubei returned to the courtyard of the Purple Cloud sect. Although Mu Shuer deliberately gave him a cold face because of what happened the day before, the carefully prepared meal on the table said everything. Swear, after this meal, Martial Uncle will go on a long journey again, Chu Bei said as he put a piece of meat into his mouth. I haven't stayed here for 2 days, and I'm going out again. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Mu Shuai could no longer keep a straight face. Her face was filled with hidden bitterness. I'm going to train with my teacher. Only when I'm strong can I better protect you. Chu Bei reached out and pulled Mu Shuai to his side. After the battle with the woman, Chu Bei urgently wanted to improve his strength. Just relying on the fruit given by the system, he encountered a bottleneck. After saying goodbye to Mu Shuai, Chu Bei entered the source sky space. Time passed day by day. Until one day. In the courtyard, a pitch-black gap appeared, and Chu Bei's figure slowly descended. When Chu Bei saw everything around him, his pupils suddenly shrank. The place where he landed was not his courtyard. To be precise, it was still his courtyard, but it had become a ruin. When Chu Bei walked out of the source sky space, his cultivation had reached the half-saint level. At the same time, a stream of information appeared in Chu Bei's mind. Through this stream of information, he had a further understanding of the cultivation system of the Xianhuang continent. In the Xianhuang continent, above ordinary people was the Qi tempering realm, level 1 to level 9, which was a realm of body refinement. Above that was the mortal evolution realm, level 1 to level 9, which was the initial stage of releasing true martial qi. Above that was the martial contact realm, which was divided into 3 realms. Martial spirits, level 1 to 9 stars, could condense spirit armor. Martial generals, level 1 to 9 stars, could condense cyclones in their bodies and could temporarily stay in the void. Martial kings, level 1 to 9 stars, were extremely skilled in using true martial qi and had the ability to fly. The previous sect master of the Purple Cloud sect, who was also the father of the original Chu Bei, was a 9 stars martial king, the strongest person in the Purple Cloud sect. As for the realms above the martial contact realm, he had just learned about it through the system. The Saint realm was divided into 3 realms, half-saint, saint, and saint emperor. Each realm had 9 stars. After a series of rewards, Chu Bei's cultivation was now at the half-saint level. At this realm, he had begun to touch upon the power of space. It was roughly equivalent to the Battle Grandmaster realm. Rustle, rustle, rustle. At this moment, a wave of hurried and disorderly footsteps approached from afar. Quick, the commotion just now came from here. Soon, a group of 8 people appeared in Chu Bei's line of sight. Young Martial Uncle, you're back. Seeing Chu Bei, the group of 8 people revealed a surprised expression at the same time. What's going on? Why did my courtyard become like this? Where is Shuai? Chu Bei's gaze locked onto one of the disciples as he spoke coldly. Faintly, he already had a bad feeling about this. Young Martial Uncle, before the sect master finds out, you should leave quickly. One of the disciples hesitated for a moment before speaking. Sect master? Are you talking about Li Xian? Hearing that disciple's words, Chu Bei's face became completely gloomy. In the next moment, he released his divine sense and covered every corner of the Purple Yushan sect. After a while, a murderous look appeared on Chu Bei's face. He rose into the air and flew toward the purple cloud square at the top of the mountain. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Young Martial Uncle flew away. I saw it too. Didn't they say that only martial kings can fly? Could it be that young Martial Uncle is already a martial king expert? Impossible! This young Martial Uncle must be an expert in disguise. Looking at Chu Bei's back as he rose into the air, the 8 disciples' faces turned gray in an instant. Each of them was as fast as lightning, so shocked that they stood rooted to the ground like half a block of wood. At the top of the Purple Yushan sect, in the Purple Cloud prison, the air in the prison seemed to be dense with water vapor. The gloomy void was suffused with the smell of decay and rotting corpses. Chapter 772. The cells were connected to each other but separated by iron pillars. There were 3 to 5 people locked up in the cells. The chains on these prisoners clanged against each other, like the unwilling roars of vengeful spirits. If there was one person in the cell who wasn't chained up, it would be a young girl wearing a beautiful dress. The dress was sky blue and had an extraordinary texture. It was as thin as a cicada's wing. Although it didn't have any fancy decorations, it was exquisite and noble. It could be said to be fresh and natural. If one had to use flowery words to describe the beauty of the girl in this dress, it could only be described as beautiful as an orchid. The girl was Mu Shuer. The dress she was wearing was the starry dress that Chu Bei gave her. At this moment, the starry dress was releasing a sky blue light that formed a barrier around Mu Shuer. It was very strange. By phone, you've lost. This is the last time I ask you today. Where is that brat Chu Bei? A man in black walked into a cell with heavy footsteps. He stared coldly at a middle-aged man in a long robe who was chained up. Perhaps it was because he had suffered too much, but the middle-aged man's body was covered in bloody scars. New and old scars stacked on top of each other. He looked very miserable. Old Fifth, come closer. My body is weak and my voice is soft. I'm afraid you can't hear me, the middle-aged man said intermittently. Hearing this, the man in black was delighted. He quickly walked over to the middle-aged man. Bah! Just as the man in black was waiting expectantly for the middle-aged man's answer, the latter spat on his face. By phone, you're courting death. Realizing that he had been tricked, the black-clothed man lashed the whip in his hand at Bai Feng's body. With a crisp sound, another deep wound bloomed. Ha ha ha! Looking at the man in black spit, Bai Feng raised his head and laughed. He didn't seem to care about the pain coming from his wound. Ever since he witnessed the magical power of Mu Shuer's dress, Bai Feng had let himself go. As long as his precious disciple was fine, he didn't care if he died. Fifth Marshal Uncle, I beg you. Don't hurt Master anymore. Looking at the new wound on Bai Feng's body, Mu Shuer sobbed. Large tears rolled down her face. Shuer, why don't you tell Fifth Marshal Uncle where that brat Chu Bei is? The black-clothed man tilted his head to look at Mu Shuer. Or you can take off that dress you're wearing and let Fifth Marshal Uncle see what you're made of. Uncle Master, he. Mu Shuer's eyes were red as she nervously rubbed her skirt. I'm here. Just as Mu Shuer was biting her lips, not knowing how to answer the black-clothed man's question, an incomparably calm and very familiar voice rang in her ears. Hearing this voice, Mu Shuer was stunned at first, but after she stopped sobbing, her face lit up with joy. However, that joy didn't last for even a second before it was replaced by worry. Her beautiful eyes were filled with worry and anxiety. Bang bang! Just as Mu Shuer was looking for Chu Bei's figure, a low muffled collision sound rang out. In the next moment, several sounds came from not far away and fiercely smashed at the feet of the black-clothed man. Fifth Elder Chu Bei, he's back! A disciple spat out blood as he endured the injuries on his body and spoke with difficulty. Ha, there's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. If I had known that you dared to come back on your own, I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble. Seeing Chu Bei suddenly appear, the black-clothed man was stunned at first, but then he laughed heartily. Die! However, before the black-clothed man's smile disappeared, Chu Bei's figure moved. Sensing Chu Bei's speed and the surging true martial qi, the black-clothed man's breathing stopped, and his expression changed abruptly. Impossible! How can your cultivation? The black-clothed man's pupils rapidly contracted. After realizing that the situation was not right, he immediately used all his strength to support the spirit armor. A mere 4-star martial king! Chu Bei snorted coldly as his right palm slammed down. The violent true martial qi in his palm struck the black-clothed man's spirit armor. With a cracking sound, the spirit armor shattered. Fear surged in the black-clothed man's eyes, but before he could react, with a bang, his brain exploded. From Chu Bei's attack to the black-clothed man's death, the process only happened in a flash. Chu Bei's speed was too fast, and the latter didn't have much time to think. How could this be? The fifth elder is dead. Chu Bei is only a 3-star martial spirit. How could he kill the 4-star martial king, the fifth elder? There's a gap of 2 realms. How did he do it? The fifth elder must have been careless. It must be like this. Don't come over, we are all sect master's people. If you kill us, the sect master will definitely not let you go. Seeing the black-clothed man's death, the previous disciples gathered together. Their bodies trembled as they looked at Chu Bei vigilantly and retreated. Sect master? Li Xian will accompany you soon. As soon as his cold voice fell, Chu Bei raised his saber and slashed down. Immediately, there were several more corpses on the ground. After dealing with the black-clothed man and the others, Chu Bei's figure moved. With a crisp clang, the dungeons were opened one by one, and those who were bound by iron chains were rescued one after another. Greetings, young sect master! Seeing Chu Bei, the crowd ignored their injuries and knelt down one after another, their eyes filled with respect. Get up! Chu Bei cast his gaze at Bai Feng. Senior brother, are you all right? I won't die from this injury. Bai Feng wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. The shock in his eyes as he looked at Chu Bei had yet to fade. Not only him, but the people who were rescued also had expressions of shock on their faces. They had yet to react to the unbelievable scene that had just happened. A few months ago, the young sect master was just a cripple. Just now, he had killed a 4-star martial king with a single slap. Young martial uncle, your strength. Mu Shuer wiped the tears from the corner of her mouth and bit her teeth. Her watery eyes stared straight at Chu Bei. Do you still remember what I said to you before I left? Chu Bei pinched Mu Shuer's delicate cheeks. Unfortunately, I broke my promise and came back late. Speaking of this, Chu Bei stared at the entrance of the dungeon. His gaze gradually became fierce and a strong killing intent burst out. Fortunately, the star dress protected Mu Shuer. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Chu Bei, what is your strength now? A purple-clothed woman came to Chu Bei with injuries. Saint. Chu Bei glanced at Xia Hanyan. After his calm voice fell, his gaze returned to Bai Feng. Senior brother, follow me to kill Li Xian. Chapter 773. Look over there. Isn't that junior uncle? And second elder? Sure, do you want to die? How dare you call him second elder? If the sect leader hears you, he will punish you. The current sect leader of the Purple Cloud sect is the former great elder. As for the second elder, he has become a traitor. However, I remember that they seem to have been imprisoned. How did they appear here? Actually, I still think that junior uncle is the best candidate for the sect leader. After all, he has recovered his strength and is a 3-star martial spirit. In terms of cultivation and talent, he is undeniably the number one. They are heading towards the Purple Cloud Palace. Looking at them, are they going to find the sect leader? Let's go and see. Ta ta ta. Amidst the rustling of footsteps, the disciples who were originally cultivating followed behind Chu Bei, Bai Feng, and the others. After a while, thousands of people gathered outside the Purple Cloud Palace. Among them, except for the most loyal members who stood at the core, the rest stayed far away, as if they were watching a show. Bai Feng, why are you here? Isn't fifth brother watching over you in the dungeon? Hearing the commotion outside, a figure was the first to fly out of the great hall. When he saw Bai Feng and the people behind him, he frowned. When his gaze swept past Chu Bei, his pupils suddenly shrank. There was a faint excitement in his voice. Chu Bei, you actually dare to come back! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Several more sounds of breaking through the air rang out. Several more figures flew out of the Purple Cloud Palace. Among them was a middle-aged man in a white robe. It was the former great elder of the Purple Cloud sect, Li Xian. Li Xian, are you comfortable in the position of sect leader? Bai Feng's cold eyes were fixed on Chu Bei as he coldly snorted. Even trash like you can't keep an eye on him. Where is fifth brother? Li Xian looked at Bai Feng calmly. Dead. Chu Bei looked at Li Xian indifferently. You will be accompanying him soon. As soon as Chu Bei finished speaking, he flipped his palm. With a flash of light, a broadsword engraved with an azure dragon pattern appeared in his hand. Then, his body soared into the sky and hovered in midair. Seeing Chu Bei hovering in the air with a broadsword in his hand, Li Xian's face instantly turned ashen. He was not the only one. The third elder, the sixth elder, the seventh elder, and the disciples around the purple cloud hall all revealed shocked expressions, as if they had seen a ghost in broad daylight. Martial King? How could you be a martial king? You must die today! Li Xian recovered from his shock and his eyes locked onto Chu Bei. Other than disbelief, there was also some fear in his eyes. In just over 10 days, the other party's cultivation had actually broken through from a 3-star martial spirit to a martial king. With such terrifying talent, if he allowed the other party to leave, the other party's strength would most likely surpass his the next time. Flying in the air is the mark of a martial king. Young martial uncle has already become a martial king. No wonder the second elder and the others were able to escape from the dungeon. It must be because of young martial uncle. However, how did young martial uncle do it? Could it be that he had some kind of opportunity? This kind of cultivation speed is really monstrous. Do you remember that there is a mysterious old man behind young martial uncle? Could his cultivation speed be related to him? The surrounding disciples' eyes fell on Chu Bei as they discussed animatedly. In the sky, Chu Bei did not pay attention to the clamor around him. Die! Chu Bei's cold gaze was fixed on Li Xian's body, and a murderous intent emerged in his eyes. With a shout, Chu Bei began to use the 7-demon saber heart sutra in his mind to urge the true martial chi in his body to follow a fixed path. Kacha, kacha! Under everyone's astonished gazes, the great dragon's saber danced rhythmically. Wherever the blade passed, it was accompanied by a thin and long black lightning. Endless dark demonic energy surged violently into the great dragon's saber from an unknown source. Amidst the lightning and thunder, the great dragon's saber crazily absorbed the demonic energy. Outside the blade, a cold saber radiance gradually formed, and the saber radiance quickly lengthened and widened. It was faintly close to materializing. In the end, the great dragon's saber, including the saber radiance, was 30 feet long. The azure dragon engraved on the hilt also seemed to come alive. The dragon's eyes were constantly opening and closing, and a dragon's roar was faintly heard. As the black lightning around the great dragon's saber disappeared, a sonorous metallic sound resounded in the huge square in front of the purple cloud palace. It was different from the last time he used the heaven-defying 7-demon saber in the temple ruins. This time, due to the increase in his strength and realm, he could wield the saber more smoothly. At this moment, Chu Bei's heart was filled with a sense of loss. It was a kind of invincible momentum, a kind of confidence. It was as if with a saber in hand, no hero in the world would be able to compete with him. The indomitable momentum could even sacrifice one's life. This was the mystery of the heaven-defying 7-demon saber. Such a demonic saber was obviously more than enough to deal with Li Xian. Looking at the rising momentum of the great dragon's saber in Chu Bei's hand and feeling the terrifying momentum of the saber, Li Xian's face instantly turned solemn. The aura made his heart palpitate. He had never come into contact with such a terrifying power. It seemed to be far above that of a martial king. Sect Master, this kid seems to be extraordinary. The third elder, who was standing behind Li Xian, swallowed his saliva and looked at Chu Bei with a face full of horror. Li Xian took a deep breath, and his protective spirit armor subconsciously became stronger. At the same time, the purple genuine martial chi danced around his body like a raging flame. Little brat Chu Bei, let this old man see if you're bluffing. Although Li Xian had the intention to retreat, in front of so many people, even if he was afraid of Chu Bei's aura, he could not really retreat without a fight. With a clang, Li Xian took out the soft sword wrapped around his waist. It was a golden sword. Perhaps due to the pressure of the great dragon saber in Chu Bei's hand, Li Xian did not hesitate to use his most powerful sword move. The soft sword in his hand danced, and with every stroke, the golden light on the blade became more and more intense. After accumulating power, Li Xian took the initiative to attack. At this moment, the soft sword in Li Xian's hand was like a golden sun, and a blazing golden light filled the sky. "It's over." Chu Bei's eyes narrowed. After the cold syllable, he took a step forward and pointed the tip of his saber at Li Xian, swinging it down violently. With a swing of his saber, 7 rays of saber light shot out. Strangely, the second ray of saber light that appeared seemed to be slightly faster than the first one. Soon, these rays of saber light overlapped. With every layer of saber light, the aura of the saber light rose to a new level. When the 7 rays of saber light overlapped, the black lightning that had disappeared reappeared around the saber light. In an instant, the aura of the saber light rose to an unparalleled peak. Looking at the collision in the sky that was about to happen at any moment, the originally noisy figures in the field instantly disappeared, replaced by a deathly silence. Chapter 774. Clang! In the sky, there was an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing. The violent collision of energy shook the bluestone tiles below, causing the spectators below to shudder in fear. However, the sound of metal clashing still reverberated in the air. The golden sword in Li Xian's hand was shattered by the blade radiance, scattering all over the ground. Then, the blade radiance continued to move forward. With a swoosh, it pierced through Li Xian's forehead. Then, it struck the ground fiercely. With a loud bang, a huge crack appeared on the ground. Looking at the scene in the sky, everyone's jaws dropped. They could not believe their eyes. It was as if they had been struck by a bolt from the blue, or as if a basin of cold water had been poured over them from head to toe. Their entire body was numb. The 5 people in the field could have predicted that the battle would end before it began. Looking back at Li Xian, the body that was originally suspended in the air was split into 2 from his forehead to the middle of his legs. Brain matter, intestines, internal organs, all rained down from the sky. The sect leader is dead. This Chu Bei kid. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Retreat! The 3rd elder was stunned at first. When the body fell to the ground, one by one, they regained their senses. Immediately, there was fear between their brows as they soared into the sky. 1,000 swords facing the sky! Just as the 3rd elder and the others were about to escape, Chu Bei's emotionless cold voice floated in the air. In the next moment, he used the blade as his right hand held the blade and drew a circle. Then, he swung it. Suddenly, with the sound of breaking air, thousands of blade radiances appeared from the void and rushed toward the 3rd elder and the others who had not yet flown far. Swoosh! Swoosh! The blade radiances arrived in the blink of an eye. As soon as the miserable wails sounded, the 3rd elder, 6th elder, 7th elder, and the others were swallowed by the blade radiances. The 7 bodies turned into countless pieces and fell from the sky. The bloody scene was nauseating and unbearable to look at. The air gradually stagnated. In the purple cloud square, there was a dead silence. For a moment, Bai Feng, Xia Hanyan, Mu Shuer, and the crowd of disciples who were watching the battle from afar all fell into an inexplicable silence. All of them could only stare at the figure in the sky in horror. From the moment Chu Bei appeared in front of the purple cloud palace to the moment he killed Li Xian, the 3rd elder, and the others, less than 3 minutes had passed. This isn't even a battle of the same level. Young martial uncle is definitely not a martial king. He has definitely surpassed this realm. Otherwise, how could it be possible to kill the 1st elder, who was at the peak of the 8-star Do Wang class, so easily? Did you guys hear the names of the martial skills that young martial uncle just used? The heaven-defying 7 devil saber, and the 10,000 swords facing the sky. These don't seem to be martial arts of our sect. Could it be that these 2 martial skills were taught by that mysterious old man behind him? That being said, do any of you know what is the realm above Martial King? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. The traitor Lucien is dead. From today onwards, I will be the sect leader of the Purple Cloud sect. Do you have any objections? Chu Bei was suspended in the void. After putting away the great dragon saber, he placed his hands behind his back. His gaze swept across the crowd and his majestic voice resounded in the Purple Cloud Square. Greetings to the sect leader. In a uniform thud, Bai Feng and the group of people who had been rescued earlier were the first to kneel down. As for the rest of the disciples, after being stunned for a moment, they also knelt down in front of Chu Bei. For them, it did not matter much who the sect leader was. Instead, it was the disciples and mentors who had followed Li Xian who knelt down because of fear that their legs were trembling at this moment. Bai Feng, you should be aware of those who followed Li Xian in the sect, right? I'll leave this matter to you. You must leave no one alive. Chu Bei looked at Bai Feng and gave his instructions. He said in a deep voice, "In the future, whoever dares to covet the position of sect leader, kill them without mercy." As soon as his cold voice fell, he waved his palm and a huge pit with a diameter of 5 meters and a depth of 1 meter suddenly appeared on the ground. Rumble! Not long after Chu Bei's voice fell, a strange buzzing sound suddenly rang out in the sky above the purple Yushan Square. Hearing this sound, everyone subconsciously looked up. In the distant sky, a mass of colorful clouds inexplicably surged out, ripples spreading out from the clouds. Purple Cloud Sect Leader Chu Bei, 3-star half-saint, received the token. Suddenly, a faint and cold voice rang out from the colorful clouds. It was a woman's voice. Hearing this voice, Chu Bei's heart inexplicably trembled. It was not because this voice was frightening, but because this woman's voice was vaguely familiar. It was also at this moment that a figure wearing a black gauze dress and a black gauze hat slowly walked out from the colorful clouds. Although the woman's appearance could not be seen clearly because of the black gauze hat, her graceful and exquisite figure could be seen. "You're not dead." The moment she saw Chu Bei's appearance, the woman's body trembled, and her killing intent immediately disappeared. Purple Cloud Sect Leader Chu Bei, 3-star half-saint, received the token. Perhaps due to some special reason, the woman's killing intent disappeared in a flash, and her originally fluctuating emotions returned to normal. Then, with a wave of her hand, a golden light flew out from her hand and swept toward Chu Bei. Seeing Chu Bei receive the token, the woman snorted coldly and returned to the colorful clouds, disappearing from everyone's sight. That woman, who is she? Her methods, what kind of cultivation is she? Born in the continent, but knowing nothing about the continent, we are also sad. Half-saint? Is this the realm above the Martial King realm? Young Martial Uncle is now a 3-star half-saint. Didn't you hear? This woman seems to know young Martial Uncle. Have you forgotten? Young Martial Uncle is now the sect leader. You should change your words. Everyone looked at each other in dismay as they watched the colorful clouds and the woman in black disappear. Chu Bei breathed a long sigh of relief as he watched the woman disappear. His hanging heart finally relaxed. He had to admit that no matter how big the world was, some people would appear in his life again. For example, he knew who the masked woman who had just given him the card was from her voice alone. It wasn't because Chu Bei was sensitive to voices, but because the woman had left a deep impression on him. Not only was she the first and only woman he had seen from head to toe since he came to the Xianwang continent, but she was also the one who had killed him. Of course, it was all because of that vicious dog. The moment he heard the woman's voice, Chu Bei was already prepared to use the power of Genesis Heaven. After all, the other party's strength was too strong. Fortunately, the woman seemed to be restrained by something when she gave him the token and forcibly suppressed her killing intent. Speaking of the token, Chu Bei lowered his head to look at it. It was a token of perfect quality, and the sparkling hazy light added a touch of mystery to it. Chapter 775. The word Huang was particularly conspicuous on the token, and there was a number at the bottom right corner, 142302. Chu Bei stared blankly at it for a long time but couldn't understand the meaning of the number, so he simply threw it into the small world. After dealing with the trivial matters at hand, Chu Bei naturally spent the rest of his time with Mu Shuer. He made up stories and told her what he had experienced these days, and she looked as if she hadn't heard enough. In the end, Chu Bei felt a little apologetic when he saw Mu Shuer's fangirl-like expression of worship. Although he had become the sect master, Chu Bei was just a hands-off boss, and all matters were handed over to Mu Shuer's master. As for himself, he once again entered the source heaven space. He wanted to cultivate to the peak of this dimension as soon as possible and end this last trial as soon as possible. A month later, when Chu Bei walked out of the source heaven space, his cultivation had reached the 9 stars saint stage. In the Xianhuang continent's cultivation system, the first level was the Qi tempering realm, which was the body refining realm. The second level was the mortal evolution realm, which was the release of true martial Qi. The third level was the martial contact realm, which was the martial spirit realm, which was the condensing of spirit armor. The martial general realm, which was the temporary floating in the void. The martial king realm, which was the flying realm. Above the martial contact realm was the fourth level, the saint realm. This realm was further divided into the half-saint, saint, and saint emperor stages, each of which had 9 stars. Through the stacking of the system rewards, Chu Bei's cultivation was now at the 9 stars saint stage. At this stage, Chu Bei could feel the manipulation of spatial power. Compared to the battle plane realm, his current strength was roughly equivalent to a 5-star Do Zun. Ta ta ta! At this moment, a wave of hurried footsteps approached from afar. Why are there explosions in the Great Hall? Soon, a group of 8 people led by Bai Feng appeared in Chu Bei's line of sight. Little martial uncle! A girl in a purple dress was first stunned, but then she was the first to exclaim excitedly. Martial uncle, you've been gone for a month this time. The next time you leave for such a long time, you must inform me in advance. Mu Shuer quickly ran to Chu Bei's side and excitedly grabbed his arm. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and pouted. I promise there won't be a next time. After Chu Bei said good 3 times in a row, he reached out and stroked Mu Shuer's hair. Shuer, you've become even prettier after a month. You make fun of me every time you come back. Mu Shuer's cheeks flushed red as she glared at Chu Bei. Sect Master, did you make another breakthrough in your cultivation? Bai Feng looked at Chu Bei suspiciously. When the other party had left, he had been a half-saint 3 stars. Even though he couldn't see through him, he could still sense the fluctuations of true martial qi in the other party's body. However, when he returned this time, he couldn't sense it at all. It was as if the other party had become an ordinary person. Just barely. Chu Bei smiled. Specifically? Bai Feng's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, and he immediately asked. Saint 9 stars, Chu Bei answered. Bai Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. He never would have thought that the 20-something sect master of his sect would be so strong. He was only a step away from becoming a saint emperor. If there's nothing else, you can all leave. Shuer, you stay behind. Chu Bei waved at Bai Feng and the other light bulbs. Little martial uncle. Mu Shuer softly murmured after Bai Feng and the others left. Rumble. However, just as Chu Bei was about to do something to Mu Shuer, a deafening roar came from outside the main hall. Chu Bei frowned. His figure flickered, and he appeared above the main hall. At this moment, the disciples of the Purple Cloud sect heard the sound and subconsciously looked up. In the distant sky, a colorful cloud appeared out of nowhere, ripples spreading out from the cloud. It's this phenomenon again. It appeared a month ago. Is it that mysterious woman again? Is she here to find the sect master again? If I remember correctly, she seemed to have given the sect master a token of unknown origin. As expected, a figure in a black gauze dress and a black gauze hat slowly walked out from the colorful cloud amidst the discussion of the disciples. Although it was impossible to see the woman's appearance due to the black gauze hat, it was still possible to determine that she had a graceful figure. How can you be a 9-star saint? As if sensing Chu Bei's aura, the woman's originally calm voice rippled, and it wasn't difficult to hear the surprise in her voice. We meet again. Chu Bei chuckled. He currently had sufficient Genesis Heaven power, making him completely unafraid of the other party. The last time we met, you were still a 3-star half-saint. It's only been a month, how can you be a 9-star saint? The woman questioned Chu Bei, 2 rays of light shooting from her eyes at Chu Bei as if she wanted to see through him. What's impossible about it? Isn't this sect master standing right in front of you? Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at the woman with a playful expression. We've already dealt with each other in the illusion. Do you really treat this sect master as an ordinary person? Hearing this, the woman seemed to recall something unbearable, and her body trembled violently. The moment her killing intent emerged, she immediately restrained it. There must be a secret on you that we haven't grasped yet. You need to come back with me. The host can use the summoning function to make contractors serve the host. The moment the woman's indifferent voice fell, the system's voice sounded in Chu Bei's mind. Chu Bei's expression was startled. After recovering, his consciousness immersed in the system panel again. He clicked on the summon button, which was a summoning page. There were currently many columns on the page. Column 1, Battle Through the Heavens Plane, Contractor Xiao Yan. Column 2, Tomb of the Gods Plane, Contractor Chenan. Column 3, Doluo Continent Plane, Contractor Tang San. Column 4, Shrouded Sky Plane, Contractor Yifan. These were the contractors he had bound through the system, and they were also his disciples. At the end of each column, there was a metal button with the word summon printed on it. Chu Bei hesitated for a moment, and the moment his mind moved, he pressed the summon button behind Xiao Yan. Rumble. Suddenly, a strange sound sounded, and then the void in front of Chu Bei became distorted. Then, a blue intersecting wheel slowly emerged. At the top of the wheel, the words Wheel of Time were particularly conspicuous. Below it, there were the words Battle Through the Heavens Plane, Xiao Yan. Looking at it carefully, there was a blue channel woven by the long river of time in the wheel. Looking at the sudden appearance of the Wheel of Time, Chu Bei's heart trembled inexplicably. When he went to the major planes in the past, he passed through this wheel, and it was as if he was really walking in the long river of time. Chapter 776. What is that thing in front of Sect Master? I don't know, and I don't dare to ask. Is that Azure Passage the gate of hell? Look, someone seems to be coming out. The crowd of disciples stared at the Wheel of Time in front of Chu Bei with a puzzled look on their faces. Then, with a cry of surprise, a figure appeared in the Azure Passage. The figure stood with his hands clasped behind his back. At first glance, he gave off a very contradictory feeling. He was clearly standing in the passage, but at the same time, he felt thousands of miles away. It was a young man who seemed to be in his 20s, and his body was shrouded in clouds and mist. In one step, he exited the Azure Passage and stood in front of Chu Bei. There wasn't the slightest fluctuation of true martial qi on his body, but he was quietly suspended in the air, as if he had merged with heaven and earth. He looked like an ordinary person, but at the same time, he was like the ruler of heaven and earth. As he swept his gaze around, an imposing aura of someone who had been in a high position for a long time spread out, making people feel respect for him and want to kneel down and worship him. Where is this world? Were you the one who released that energy just now? Are you the one who brought me here? The man looked straight ahead, gently stroking the Wheel of Time. As he muttered, he seemed to sense something and turned his head abruptly. When he saw the appearance of the person standing behind him, the imposing aura of someone who looked down on the world dissipated. "Master!" the man shouted at Chu Bei, as if he had returned to 8,000 years ago. "Master, it was you who summoned me! No wonder I couldn't see through the power in the blue passage, and couldn't even fight against it. I had no choice but to be brought here by him. Seeing that it was you, I feel relieved. Among all the people I've seen, you're the only one who possesses such power that surpasses the heavens and earth. Master, what kind of power is that? I seem to feel the power of Source Heaven carrying the passage of time, and it is difficult to capture a sense of reality." Xiao Yan looked at Chu Bei. At this moment, he no longer seemed to be the ruler of heaven and earth, but just a confused person thirsting for answers. Feeling the terrifying power in Xiao Yan's body, Chu Bei nodded with satisfaction. "Yener, do you know how many years it has been since we last met? It has been 8,000 years in the great domain of chaos," Xiao Yan said with a look of certainty. After listening to Xiao Yan's words, Chu Bei sighed faintly and said with a serious look, "This is a star called the Black Wilderness Continent, and it is also the star where I am now. Is Master training in the myriad star regions?" Xiao Yan was puzzled. "Who is that mysterious person who walked out of the passage? What is his relationship with the sect master?" Because the conversation between Chu Bei and Xiao Yan was always only audible to each other through divine sense, in the eyes of the disciples of the Purple Cloud sect, Chu Bei and Xiao Yan just looked at each other silently for a long time. "Sect Master Chu, come with me." The lady in the sky looked at Xiao Yan suspiciously. After which, her gaze landed on Chu Bei. Her voice was ice cold. "Master, who is she?" Xiao Yan glanced at the woman without the slightest emotion on his face. With his strength, looking at the woman in the sky was undoubtedly like looking at an ant. "Injure her origin blood essence and let her leave," Chu Bei said indifferently. "Yes, senior." Although Xiao Yan didn't understand, he still did as Chu Bei asked. The next moment, he opened his right hand with his palm facing the direction of the black-veiled woman. With a buzzing sound, the sky seemed to be fixed by an invisible force, and the noise disappeared, leaving only a dead silence. In the sky, the black-veiled woman's pupils shrank sharply, and a lot of cold sweat even came out of her forehead. Her beautiful eyes were full of fear as she looked at Xiao Yan. At this moment, the true martial divine force in her body was completely suppressed by an external force. She felt like a fish on a chopping board, at the mercy of others, unable to resist at all. While the black-veiled lady was shocked, she saw Xiao Yan open his palm. His index finger moved slightly and a couple of drops of fresh blood that carried a golden glow flew out from between the brows of the black-veiled lady and landed in front of Chu Bei. In an instant, the black-veiled woman's face turned pale. "Master, do you want to continue? Do you want me to destroy it for you?" Xiao Yan's plain words drifted in the air, and in the black-veiled woman's ears, it was no different from the devil's voice from hell, causing her graceful body to tremble fiercely, and the fear in her eyes was even more intense. "There's no need. Let her go." As Chu Bei's voice fell, the black-veiled woman suddenly found that the terrifying force that suppressed her disappeared, and she regained her freedom. Purple Cloud Sect Master Chu Bei, 9 stars Saint, receive the token. 1 month later, participate in the Xian War on time. Perhaps it was due to her fear of Xiao Yan, but the moment the woman's cold voice sounded, she raised her hand and threw a golden light at Chu Bei. Finally, it returned to the colorful cloud cluster and swiftly disappeared from everyone's sight. This token was exactly the same as the one he received a month ago, and the word Huang was particularly conspicuous, but the number in the lower right corner changed from 142,302 to 9. Who is that woman? Sure enough, she gave the sect master another token. Did you guys hear what he said? The sect master has become a 9 stars saint. What's the origin of that mysterious man? He seems to be even more terrifying than that woman. Later, we'll secretly ask junior sister Schwer to find out. The group of disciples looked in the direction where the woman in the black dress disappeared, and their eyes switched back and forth between Chu Bei and Xiao Yan, and they discussed intensely. Contractor's time is up, the wheel of time will be activated again, and the contractor will be sent back. As the system's voice sounded, the wheel of time emitted a blue light that enveloped Xiao Yan's body. It's this irresistible force. Looking at the blue light that lit up on his body, Xiao Yan looked at Chu Bei. Master, I still have many questions that I haven't solved. Can you send me back later? Looking at Xiao Yan's back in the wheel of time, Chu Bei pretended to be mysterious and said, Some answers need to be found by yourself. Chi! With a strange sound, the space in front of Chu Bei distorted again, and the wheel of time disappeared with Xiao Yan. Little Martial Uncle, what's with that person and that mysterious object? Mu Shui immediately ran to Chu Bei's side. Facing Mu Shui's innocent and confused gaze, Chu Bei once again began to make up stories to deceive her. Chu Bei entered the source heaven space again. A few days passed in a flash. When Chu Bei left the source heaven space, he had officially stepped into the hierarch stage. Chu Bei's gaze swept around, and with one thought, the surrounding environment changed as if he had arrived in a new world. Chapter 777. Domain. At the ultimate god level, one would have a domain that very few people in the dark region could master. However, as for what kind of power this domain actually contained, Chu Bei actually didn't discover anything strange even after exploring it for a while. It seemed to be ordinary. It was also at this moment that the system poured the complete cultivation system of the dark region into his mind. In the cultivation system of the dark region, the first level was the Qi tempering realm. The second level was the mortal evolution realm, which was the release of true martial Qi. The third level was the martial contact realm, which was divided into martial spirit, which was the condensation of spirit armor. Martial general, which was the temporary floating in the void. Martial king, which was the flight. Above the martial contact realm was the fourth level, the Saint realm. This realm was further divided into the half-saint, saint, and holy emperor. Each realm had 9 stars. Above the Saint realm was the last realm, the deification realm. The deification realm was further divided into the ultimate god, monarch god, and emperor god. Each realm also had 9 stars. After entering the deification realm, one would have the power of a domain. Of course, in the entire dark region, there were only a few deification realm experts. In the current continent, the strongest existences were the 7 ultimate gods. They controlled the 7 strongest forces in the dark region. As for the monarch god and emperor god, these 2 realms only existed in the ancient records. With the stacking of the system's rewards, Chu Bei was now a 3-star ultimate god in the deification realm. Feeling the majestic power in his body, Chu Bei had a clearer understanding of the dark region's martial power system. Perhaps it was weaker than the perfect world, but it was definitely stronger than the Do Qi continent. This was because his current strength was roughly equivalent to a Do Di. Tap, tap, tap. At this moment, a series of hurried footsteps came from afar. Young martial uncle, are you back? Soon, a girl in a purple dress ran into the hall. Her voice was heard before she arrived. Young martial uncle, it's really you. You're finally back. The Xian battle has already begun. Mu Shui threw herself into Chu Bei's arms. Young martial uncle, didn't you promise me that you would tell me in advance if you were to leave for such a long time? After the excitement, Mu Shui pouted and mumbled. Hee, martial uncle guarantees that this is really the last time. Chu Bei immediately coughed dryly. When he heard Mu Shui say that the Xian battle had begun, he knew that another month had passed in the Black Wasteland continent. One day later, Chu Bei's cultivation made another breakthrough, rising from godly venerable to 1-star divine lord. Rumble! With a loud bang, Chu Bei's body inexplicably became illusory and merged into the void. Then, with a thought, it returned to its original state. At that moment, he seemed to know what kind of power was contained in his ultimate God realm domain. It was the power of creation, the ability to create things out of thin air. When his aura rose again, from 1 star Divine Lord to 9 stars Divine Lord, and when he crossed the next threshold and became a so-called God Emperor, he was suddenly shocked. In order to verify the power of the domain, Chu Bei raised his hand and waved it. In an instant, a small world was formed in front of him. Trees, mountains, rivers, beasts. All of these were living creatures that he had created out of thin air. Chi La. With a wave of his sleeve, the small world disappeared. God Emperor, the highest realm in the Black Wasteland continent. It was also the ultimate goal of hundreds of millions of cultivators. The moment he stepped into this realm, the true martial chi in his body changed as if it had evolved. It could be called the Emperor's power. Of course, the Emperor's power here could not be compared to the immortal Emperor's power in the perfect world. It only referred to the God Emperor's power in the Black Wasteland continent. In the cultivation system of the Black Wasteland continent, the Chi Tempering realm, the Mortal Evolution realm, the Martial Contact realm, Martial Spirit, Martial General, Martial King, the Saint Entering realm, Half Saint, Saint, Holy Emperor, and the God Ascension realm, Divine Venerable, Divine Lord, God Emperor. If he really converted, his 2 stars Divine Venerable realm cultivation before he left was equivalent to the Divine Fire realm in the perfect world. When he reached 1 star Divine Lord, his cultivation was equivalent to the Heavenly God realm. When he reached 1 star Divine Lord, his cultivation was no weaker than the self-severing realm experts in the perfect world. Although such combat power was nothing in the perfect world in Homing's journey to the west, it was already an absolute overlord in the Black Wasteland continent. After all, the strongest existences on the continent today were only the 7 9 stars Divine Venerables, who respectively controlled the 7 strongest forces in the Black Wasteland continent. Thud, thud, thud. At this moment, a series of hurried footsteps came from afar. A young girl in a purple dress appeared in Chu Bei's line of sight with small, quick steps, as if she didn't recognize anyone. "Little Uncle Master, are you going to participate in the Xian battle or not?" Mu Shuer raised her head with confusion in her beautiful eyes. Chu Bei stroked the hair on Mu Shuer's forehead and said with a smile, "Of course I'm going. I'll take you to see this so-called Xian battle in the Black Wasteland continent." Hearing Chu Bei's words, Mu Shuer was stunned at first, but when she reacted, she nodded with joy. Her little head nodded like a chick eating rice. "Let's go." Chu Bei hugged Mu Shuer, and with a wave of his hand, they appeared above the purple cloud sect. Majestic mountain peaks, lush forests, buildings shrouded in spirit chi, and disciples practicing martial arts. Standing high in the sky, Chu Bei looked down at the purple cloud sect again and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The scenes of the past few months were still vivid in his mind. Before the appearance of the Source Heaven Space, he had been with the girl in his arms for 3 months. High in the sky, Chu Bei stared at the east and frowned slightly. The center of the Black Wasteland continent, which was the junction between the east and west continents, was separated by a mysterious force. He couldn't see through it, and it was very hazy. "Little Uncle Master, is this the Emperor's city of the Black Wasteland continent? It's so magnificent." Looking at the city wall in front of her, Mu Shuer's face was filled with excitement. Her expression was even more exaggerated than a country bumpkin entering a city for the first time. The 80-meter-high city wall looked extremely majestic up close. The thickness of the city wall was more than 30 meters, and it was completely made of granite. Because it was the Xian battle period, the largest emperor city in the Black Wasteland continent, as the venue of the competition, was extremely important. The city wall was full of cultivators in charge of patrolling. Among them, the weakest had reached the martial spirit realm. If they were in a small sect, they would be qualified to be a mentor. What was the Xian battle? To be precise, it was the 4 ranking battles of the Black Wasteland continent. The 4 rankings were Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow. Different rankings corresponded to different experts. Even the last place on the Xian ranking was above the first place on the yellow ranking. Rumble. Suddenly, a deafening buzzing sound came from the center of the city. Look! The floating cloud island is rising. The heavenly battle is finally here. Do you think there will be a change in the heaven ranking this year? You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.